Chapter 1. Ganbatte. The Japanese verb gambaru is a multifaceted term that encompasses a wide range of English imperatives, translating variously as doing one's best, standing firm, refusing to give up, working hard at something, or simply persevering. To understand the depth of the concept, one must look at the three characters that compose the word. The first signifies stubbornness, recalcitrance, or being pig-headed. The second implies pulling, tautening, expanding, or making firm. And the third is the hiragana character used to complete the verb in the infinitive. Together, they form a concept that goes beyond mere effort, suggesting a determined, almost stubborn resilience in the face of challenges. In many cultures, the standard response to an acquaintance facing a hurdle, be it a competition, an academic exam, or a new life adventure, is to wish them luck. In Japan, however, the cultural impulse is to invoke the verb gambaru, most commonly conjugated in the second person as ganbatte. This phrase serves as a ubiquitous encouragement, effectively meaning, do your best and don't give up. The language offers a spectrum of variations suited for different contexts and levels of politeness. One might declare their own resolve with the first-person singular gambaru or the more formal gambarimasu. To encourage a friend, one uses ganbatte, while adding kudasai makes the encouragement more polite. A more imperative form, gambare, borders on an order, whereas gambaro or gambarimasho is a collective call to action, used to rally a team with the sentiment, let's do our best. At the extreme end of dedication lies ishokenmei ganbatte, a phrase that implies giving absolutely everything one has, putting one's entire life into the endeavor. There is a profound philosophical distinction between saying good luck and saying ganbatte. Looking for luck implies that the outcome lies in the hands of fate, entirely outside of human control. By contrast, encouraging someone to do their best conveys the belief that the outcome depends largely on their own actions. This perspective aligns with the wabi-sabi essence of reality, acknowledging that while some aspects remain beyond our influence, effort is far more significant than chance. The core message of ganbatte is to do everything within one's power and to perform to the best of one's ability. If the results do not align with one's desires, there's no need for regret or bad feelings, provided one can honestly say they did everything possible. This concept is woven into the fabric of daily life in Japan, heard when families part ways in the morning for work or school, at sports events, social functions, and even during moments of crisis when natural catastrophes strike. It is a philosophy that transforms the internal narrative from one of lethargy and procrastination to one of active engagement. Where a lethargic mind might claim a lack of desire to act, the ganbatte mentality insists on starting regardless of feelings. When a task seems unworthy of effort, this mindset urges one to try it simply to discover its value. Instead of giving up, one changes tactics and tries again. Instead of hoping for luck, one works hard to ensure fortune favors them. Rather than being paralyzed by the fear of what others might think, the focus shifts to what one's future self will think of the present inaction. The priority moves from obsessing over the result to valuing the personal growth and wisdom gained through the process. Visual manifestations of this spirit can be seen everywhere, from Japanese children pouring their heart and soul into a festival dance performance, demonstrating the joy of working hard as a team, to the timeless resilience depicted in art such as Hokusai's The Great Wave off Kanagawa. Ultimately, the philosophy dictates that one should act in life using their abilities to the fullest, working, persevering, and moving forward without surrender. If the goal remains unachieved despite these efforts, one should not feel downhearted. It is enough to know that nothing was wasted and that one truly did everything they could. Chapter 2. The Great Wave off Kanagawa. The Art of Carrying On. One of the most emblematic visual representations of this persistent spirit is found in the masterpiece created by the ukiyo-e expert Katsushika Hokusai, The Great Wave off Kanagawa. This woodblock print has captured the imagination not only of the Japanese people, but of the entire world, depicting three fast boats battling the sea's fury while Mount Fuji observes stoically from the horizon. In the scene, the whiteness of the mountain snow contrasts sharply with the whites and grays of the foaming water, which curls and hangs above the sailors like leaping claws ready to strike. It is a frozen moment of supreme tension that begs the question, what happens after the wave breaks? The fate of the rowers hangs in the balance. Will they be shipwrecked, or will they manage to change course and skillfully outsmart the surge? The image encapsulates the essence of survival. To stand any chance, they cannot freeze in terror. Instead, they must row, hoping to ride the crest of the danger to the safety of the next trough. In this struggle, Hokusai's print becomes a powerful symbol of the Ganbatte spirit. The sailors do not surrender to the overwhelming power of nature. They put every ounce of effort into moving forward simply to survive. The sea serves as a fabulous metaphor for life itself. There are times when everything flows smoothly, and we feel like old sea dogs for whom the ocean holds no secrets. Whatever challenges arise, we meet them with readiness and ease. But on other occasions, the unknown rises up to overwhelm us emotionally, and we suddenly find ourselves as the rowers beneath the great wave. Regardless of the situation, one truth remains. Even the most gigantic waves eventually break up. We may suffer accidents or face a barrage of bad news, but we always retain the choice to fall forwards. To sail through life in the spirit of Ganbatte is to embrace the attempt. Even the novice sailor who misjudges the tides and fails to put out to sea returns to the shore with a precious lesson learned. It is far better to join the waves, even knowing some may sweep you back, than to choose the third and worst option, remaining on the beach. Like someone waiting at home for easy opportunities, the sailor who refuses to leave the sand condemns themselves to being a mere spectator, never learning anything because they are standing still. The British philosopher Alan Watts identified a profound connection between humanity and these rhythmic movements of the sea. He suggested that we do not come into this world as strangers, but rather come out of it, like a wave from the ocean. Just as a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing, we are a function of what the whole universe is doing. This analogy extends to the very passage of time. Just as we cannot stop the waves in the sea, we cannot halt the events that time brings. If we remain motionless in the water, we are swallowed. If we stand still in life, we are devoured by apathy. The key to survival is not to fight the unstoppable, but to change oneself into the wave. This shift in mindset distinguishes those who are shipwrecked from those who ride the currents. The fragile mindset sees nearby waves only at the last minute, trusts in blind luck, and risks everything without preparation, leading to collapse in the first storm. The resilient Ganbatte mindset, however, anticipates giant waves, prepares thoroughly, and practices on smaller swells before facing the high seas. Instead of relying on chance, the resilient navigator trusts in experience and intuition, adapting to the conditions. By refusing to be paralyzed by the magnitude of the challenge, one learns to forecast the surge and move with it, transforming the threat of the wave into the momentum of life. Chapter 3. 3 Years Sitting on a Rock. While gazing at Tama, the cat, taking her customary nap on a small garden rock, the mind drifts naturally to the Japanese proverb Ishi no ue nimo sannen, which translates literally to on a rock for 3 years. It is a saying ingrained in every Japanese child, carrying a lesson of profound endurance.
Though the proverb does not state it explicitly, the implication is that if one sits on a cold, hard rock for 3 years, the heat of one's body will eventually warm it through, and perhaps even melt it. It serves as a metaphor for mastery. Although a new endeavor may feel strange, difficult, or unyielding at first, one will eventually conquer it through sheer perseverance. This principle applies vividly to the experience of starting a new job. The initial weeks, spent among strangers performing tasks one has yet to master, can feel incredibly tough. Yet the proverb suggests that with time, the discomfort fades, friends are made, skills are acquired, and valuable lessons are learned. Rewards that would remain forever out of reach had one thrown in the towel at the beginning. This spirit is embodied in the legend of the Buddhist monk Bodhidharma, who is said to have sat motionless on a rock for 3 years in meditation. Whether he physically melted the rock is irrelevant. The significance lies in the willpower he demonstrated in the attempt. The image of Bodhidharma's unmoving resolve inspired the famous Daruma dolls, the egg-shaped talismans found at the entrances of shrines and temples. Sold with blank eyes, these dolls are vessels for ambition. Upon purchasing one, a person paints in the first eye while making a wish or setting a goal. The daruma is then placed prominently in the home, serving as a daily reminder of that initial intention. Only when the goal is achieved or the wish granted is the second eye painted, completing the face. Yet one does not need a physical doll or a rock to practice this discipline. Visualizing a goal that seems unreachable and writing it down can serve the same purpose. The essence of Ishi no Ue Nimo Sannen is that life requires not just the courage to start, but the determination to finish what has been started, to remain on the rock for as long as it takes.
Chapter 4. A rolling stone gathers no moss. Japanese culture is often characterized by what might appear to be contradictions, but these are better understood as a form of pragmatism essential for dealing with life's shifting circumstances. Since nothing in life proceeds in a straight line, the strategy of sitting on a rock for 3 years is not always the best course of action. Wisdom lies in knowing when perseverance has turned into futility and when it is time to move on. The Japanese language, with its inherent ambiguity, embraces this flexibility, allowing meanings to shift depending on the context. This ambiguity is mirrored in the Western proverb, "A rolling stone gathers no moss." Originally adapted from the Latin writer Publilius Syrus, the phrase was intended to praise nomads who, by remaining in motion and refusing to put down roots, maintained their freedom and independence. Centuries later, however, Erasmus of Rotterdam reinterpreted the saying to mean the opposite, that a moving stone cannot accumulate moss, implying that constant movement prevents one from building substance or wealth. To Erasmus, the stationary stone was not stagnant, but stable. In Japan, the metaphor takes on yet another layer of meaning because moss, or koke, is revered. It features prominently in the national anthem, Kimigayo, which wishes for a rain to last until pebbles grow into boulders adorned with moss. Thus, the Japanese interpretation of the rolling stone proverb encompasses both the Roman desire for freedom and the Erasmian warning against shallowness. The moss can be seen as either the stagnation of bad moss or the accumulated beauty and wisdom of beautiful moss. If one stands still and begins to be covered in the former, it is time to get the ball rolling. Conversely, if one is rolling so fast that they cannot accumulate the depth and character of the latter, it is time to stop and take a breather. The challenge lies in intuitively knowing which strategy to apply, whether to hold one's ground like a rock or to roll on in search of the next objective, ensuring that one remains flexible and never trapped. Chapter 5. The Difficult and the Impossible.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers operates under a motto that perfectly captures the gradation of effort required for great things. The difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. This sentiment resonates deeply with the story of Jordi Campoy, a creative professional who attended a course years ago. By trade, Jordi was a successful musician and producer, working on a popular television program and mixing for top artists in Spain. To many, his career was enviable, but for him, it was merely a daily task. His true dream, harbored for a decade, was to publish a novel. He had spent 10 years writing the story of a cellist in London with a complicated life and a secret hidden in her instrument case. When asked about the status of the book, he confessed he had already written the 4th version. His process was one of relentless refinement. After finishing a draft, he would pay professionals for a reader's report, accept their criticism without ego, and set to work rewriting the entire manuscript to address the flaws. He worked with a literary Sherpa who advised him to discard half the text, and he did so, rewriting it yet again. When he finally presented the work to publishers, the first editor admired it but hesitated. The second, however, fell in love with it. The novel, The Cellist, was published to good reviews and was even reprinted, opening the door for his second book. Had Jordi given up after the first difficult draft, or the second, or the third, his dream would have remained a fantasy. Instead, he treated the difficult work of rewriting as a daily practice, persisting for 10 years until he achieved the impossible. His journey mirrors the tending of a Zen rock garden, a creative act where the waves raked into the sand are ephemeral and easily undone. The willingness to perform such repetitive tasks, to see one's hard work dissolved and then to redo it with the same care, is the discipline of Ganbatte that allows one to achieve anything.
Chapter 6. Shah Khan, The Value of Patience. The discipline of Ganbatte and the willingness to endure, like a monk sitting on a rock or a gardener raking sand, naturally leads to the cultivation of a quieter, often undervalued virtue, patience. An ancient Zen tale illustrates this through the encounter between a young student and his old master in a traditional Japanese house. From the moment the young man arrived, the sage offered nothing but a subtle gesture inviting him to sit. There were no words of wisdom, only a profound silence. The master simply sipped tea from a bowl, his gaze fixed peacefully on the lush garden and the pine forest swaying in the light breeze, ignoring the student's palpable anxiety. Unable to bear the stillness, the uneasy student finally broke the silence, asking what he should do to achieve enlightenment quickly. The learned man, in no hurry to answer, continued to sip his tea, contemplating the nature before him. When the student, tired of waiting, snapped that he was tired of waiting for enlightenment, the old man finally turned. With the weight of years on his shoulders, but the serenity of deep peace, he muttered 3 syllables: Shah, Khan. Confusion filled the room again as the pupil asked how to apply this Shah Khan and what it meant. Without losing an iota of his calmness, the master took another loud, deliberate sip of tea before answering simply and bluntly: calm down, relax, and keep moving forward little by little with steady steps. The answer only infuriated the student, who retorted that he didn't want to relax but wanted to achieve his goal as soon as possible. In response, the master whispered for him to sit down and listen carefully to what the voice of the pine trees had to tell him. Together, they sat on the tatami at the edge of the garden, spending the rest of the evening listening to the wind speak through the trees. The lesson the master imparted was that life tends to reward those who are patient and punish those who are in a hurry. While we often forget about patience or undervalue it, allowing ourselves to be swept away by the urgent, it remains a powerful force. It is a common human experience to act rashly to clear an obstacle quickly, only to end up frustrated rather than resolved.
If one were to travel back in time to those moments, the wiser course would almost always have been to act with more patience. Conversely, the achievements we are most proud of, those that stand the test of time, are almost invariably the result of patience, requiring an investment of effort over months or years. This truth is visible in the biographies of those who lead exemplary lives. Masao and Miyako Matsumoto, for instance, set a Guinness World Record in 2018 for being the oldest married couple in the world, with a combined age of 208 years. Having married in October 1937, they had been together for 80 years at the time of their recognition. When the media asked Miyako for the secret to their unwavering love and longevity, she did not cite passion or luck, but explained that the main ingredient had been patience. Nothing good comes of rushing around. It serves only to create stress. Instead, the path forward is found in the rhythm of the master's advice. Shah Khan Khan.
Chapter 7. Losing is winning. Just as patience requires a shift in perspective, seeing the value in waiting rather than rushing, so too does our understanding of victory require a re-examination of what it means to succeed. Sometimes the best option available to us is not to win, but to lose. This paradox is illustrated by a personal experience from a few years ago, during an evening spent at the home of an acquaintance in Okinawa. After we had shared tea in a traditional tatami-covered room looking out over a magnificent garden, my host suggested we play a game of Go. I accepted the invitation eagerly, having loved the strategy board game since childhood. However, after half an hour of play, the dynamic of the evening began to shift. The board was practically covered in my pieces. There was no doubt that I was going to win. Yet, as my victory became more certain, I noticed my opponent's mood worsening with every move. Each time I cornered his counters, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier and more leaden. Faced with his visible distress, I had to ask myself a crucial question. Was it worth winning the game simply to feed my ego and prove I was the superior player, or was it preferable to let myself be beaten so that my host would remain in good spirits? The choice was between a hollow tactical victory and the possibility of an agreeable evening. I opted for the latter. I made moves that allowed him to recover and eventually claim the win. The change was instantaneous. The tension dissolved into laughter. He invited me to stay for dinner, and we spent the rest of the night talking passionately about literature and music. That evening marked the beginning of a profound relationship with someone I now consider one of my best friends. By choosing to lose, I won something far more valuable than a game. In Japanese, this wisdom is encapsulated in the expression makeru ga kachi. Losing is winning. It serves as a reminder that there are situations where our ego or pride blinds us to the true nature of victory. Learning to recognize the moments when a short-term loss can yield a long-term gain requires us to consider the feelings of others, not just our own desire for dominance. When confronting a situation or a person that leaves one feeling uneasy, it is helpful to pause and ask what the ultimate result would be if one simply chose to yield. This philosophy applies across the spectrum of human relationships. In the family, it might mean allowing children to defeat you in a game from time to time, prioritizing the strengthening of their self-esteem over your own competence. In matters of the heart, it suggests letting a partner have their way in an argument, recognizing that the harmony of the relationship is often more important than being right. In the professional world, this might manifest as accepting a lower percentage at the start of a business negotiation to foster a longer-lasting, mutually beneficial partnership, or allowing a colleague to execute a task their way, even if it contradicts your own ideas. In doing so, you may transform a potential rival into an ally who will help you with future projects. Life is a series of interconnected moments, much like a path of stone steps winding through a garden. Each interaction is a step, and sometimes the surest way to move forward is to step back, allowing others the space to shine.
Whether the journey is long or short, it proceeds one step at a time, and the wisdom of Makeru Gakkachi ensures that we do not walk that path alone.
Chapter 8. The longest journeys begin with a first step. When we contemplate the finished work of a famous artist or marvel at the shattered records of an Olympic athlete, we often fall into the trap of forgetting that these individuals were once children. We view their skills as if they were acquired overnight, the result of some miraculous bestowal of talent. In reality, there was a specific moment when the professional pianist touched a key for the very first time, when the master painter grasped a brush with a clumsy, childlike hand, and when the renowned novelist first learned to decipher the alphabet. In Japanese, the saying, "Senri no michi mo ippo kara," captures this truth. Even the longest journey begins with a first step. This proverb serves as a reminder that regardless of one's stage in life, every great endeavor has humble origins, and we are often halfway to a future that need not overwhelm us. The prospect of change, whether taking up a new hobby, embarking on a new relationship, or making a career pivot, can sometimes cause us to freeze at the edge of the chasm we must cross. In these moments, the most effective strategy is to focus entirely on that singular first motion. It may be as simple as signing up for a class, sending a text message, or submitting a resume. That initial step is invariably the hardest to take, but once achieved, it generates self-confidence. Suddenly, the second step feels possible, then the third, until the act of walking becomes instinctive. If the momentum falters, the spirit of Ganbatte provides the impetus to carry on. Eventually, one looks back to realize that a single step has evolved into a long journey, and more importantly, that the traveler has grown as a human being, no longer the same person who stood hesitating at the start.
Chapter 9. The Archer and the Moon. This internal growth is beautifully illustrated by a traditional tale concerning a young man who set his mind on becoming the best archer in the world. To realize this ambition, he traveled across meadows, rivers, and mountains to seek the advice of a Kyudo grandmaster living in a modest cabin in the woods. When the young man asked what he must do to achieve greatness, the old master meditated for a moment and then gave him a seemingly impossible task. He was to hit the moon with one of his arrows. Since no one had ever managed this feat, achieving it would make him unrivaled in the art of archery. Awestruck and excited, the young archer returned to his village and devoted himself body and soul to the mission. He painstakingly cleaned his gear and spent every evening shooting at the moon the instant it appeared on the horizon. He persisted through full moons, waxing and waning phases, and even practiced on nights when the new moon offered only a faint silhouette. The villagers began to whisper that he had gone crazy, mocking him as a lunatic, but he paid them no heed. After a long time, realizing he had not achieved his aim, he returned to the master to confess his failure. The old man, however, patted him on the shoulder and told him he had succeeded. By shooting thousands of arrows in pursuit of the impossible, he had inadvertently become the best archer in the world. The master revealed the true nature of the quest. In reality, the archer was never aiming at the moon. The archer aims at himself. Chapter 10. The 10 Ganbatte Rules for Entrepreneurs. The dedication of the archer exemplifies the true definition of an entrepreneur, someone who takes the initiative and steps forward when others merely talk, refusing to give up at the first sign of trouble. This spirit is not limited to the business world. It applies equally to the arts, sports, and even the management of one's own health. While a lethargic person plans for an imaginary tomorrow, the person with an entrepreneurial mentality applies the rules of Ganbatte immediately. This mindset begins with a simple command: do it. If an idea persists in the mind, one must stop pondering and favor action, taking a chance on the new rather than waiting for the perfect conditions. Crucially, one need not have experience to begin. There is ample time to learn along the way. History is replete with figures like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates who took their first steps in the dark, creating technologies they had no prior experience with. In this process, getting things wrong is not a failure, but a form of learning. The most capable people are often those brave enough to make the most mistakes without losing heart. This requires a balance of steadfastness and flexibility. Perseverance moves the project forward, but if a strategy fails repeatedly, one must be willing to pivot and try a new approach. Through it all, the aim must always be excellence, even in simple tasks. No journey should be undertaken entirely alone. It is vital to surround oneself with people who share the vision, accepting that while some will stay until the end, others may leave. Those following the same guiding light will naturally walk the path together. Throughout the journey, arrogance must never blind the traveler. One must remain curious and never stop learning, for nothing is more inspiring than a master who asks questions like a pupil. Patience remains a core virtue, as the best results rarely appear overnight, and one should be brave enough to show their project to the world early to gain crucial feedback. Above all, regardless of external opinions, one must listen to their heart. As Carlos Castaneda wrote, "A path with a heart makes the journey pleasurable and unifies the traveler with their purpose, while a path without one leads nowhere and weakens the spirit." Listening to intuition ensures that the difficult work of Ganbatte serves a purpose that strengthens the soul.
Chapter 11. Jiro's Dream, the Perfection of the Shokunin. For those unfamiliar with the nuances of Japanese culture, it may come as a surprise to learn that the best sushi restaurant in the world, and the first to be awarded 3 Michelin stars, is located not in a grand palace or a sleek skyscraper, but in a humble establishment within the Tokyo subway system, specifically at the Ginza station. The secret to this anomaly lies with Jiro Ono, a master who, at 94 years of age, continues to work after spending 87 of those years in the kitchen. His tenacity and daily search for perfection have become legendary, making headlines around the world in 2014 when Barack Obama, invited by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to the restaurant's modest 10-stool counter, declared that although he was born in Hawaii and had eaten a lot of sushi, Jiro's was the best he had ever had in his life. Before that famous visit, Jiro had already been immortalized in the 2011 documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi, directed by David Gelb. Over the course of the film, viewers are introduced to the extreme work ethic of a true shokunin, or master craftsman. Jiro exemplifies the spirit of Ganbatte in its purest, most relentless form. He describes his process as doing the same thing over and over, improving bit by bit, driven by a yearning to achieve more. He views his craft as a mountain climb where he continues to ascend, trying to reach a summit that no one has ever seen. This extreme fixation on excellence creates an environment of rigorous discipline. When a kitchen assistant begins working with Jiro, they are not recognized as a chef until they have worked hard, day after day, for 10 years. The director of the documentary described Jiro as a man who notices everything from behind his counter. He observes whether a customer is left or right-handed to determine where to seat them. As he serves a perfect piece of sushi, he watches how it is eaten, knowing the history of that specific piece of seafood, and knowing, for instance, that his staff has recently begun massaging the octopus for 45 minutes rather than 30 to improve its texture. Such dedication commands a high price, with the set menu costing 40,000 yen, approximately $227, yet booking one of the few available stools remains a significant feat. Jiro has passed this philosophy on to his children, one of whom has worked beside him for over 50 years, destined to succeed him in a labor of perfection that transcends death.
This ageless craftsman reveals that the secret to success and self-fulfillment is simple yet demanding. Once you decide on your occupation, you must immerse yourself in your work and fall in love with it. You must never complain, but instead dedicate your life to mastering your skill. Finding one's passion and striving for excellence within it is a central tenet of the Japanese mindset. Just as the spirit of ikigai leads us to find our bliss and our purpose, the spirit of ganbatte keeps that purpose ever fresh, driving us to continue refining and perfecting our craft. In that small restaurant in Ginza Station, Jiro Ono demonstrates that even in one's 90s, the pursuit of art and quality never ends.
Chapter 12. To beat the crisis. The meaning of ganbatte extends far beyond its function as a mere word or a personal mantra for perfection. Within the Japanese consciousness, it is viewed as a fundamental spirit or way of being for society at large, particularly when confronting times of crisis. This collective resilience was the engine that drove Japan out of the ruins following the devastation of the war. During the Reconstruction era, the government, associations, and countless companies adopted the word as a rallying cry to encourage one another. The result of this unified effort was a historic economic miracle. In little more than 30 years, the country rose from the ashes to become the world's second-largest economy by 1978. Subsequently leading the global charge in the electronics and digital revolutions of the 1980s and 1990s. This capacity to mobilize the national spirit was visibly demonstrated in 1995 after an earthquake destroyed the city of Kobe. The slogan that emerged, "Ganbaro Kobe," utilized a specific conjugation of the verb that shifted the focus from the individual to the community. By using this form, the message conveyed that the inhabitants of Kobe were not alone. The entire population of Japan was uniting their ganbatte spirit to support the recovery. It was a declaration that translated emotionally to, "We all send our best wishes to Kobe. Together and with hard work, we will get over this." A similar phenomenon occurred in 2011, following the Great Tohoku earthquake, the tsunami, and the Fukushima nuclear disaster, when the national slogan, "Ganbaru," once again bound the population together in aid of the victims. Even in the face of the global crisis caused by COVID-19, this terminology resurfaced daily on television and social media, serving as a beacon of resilience that, while rooted in Japan, resonated with a world struggling to find its footing. The philosophy suggests that whenever one feels immersed in a crisis, whether on a personal level, within a company, or as a society, the most effective response is to activate the spirit of ganbatte from within. Doing so shifts the focus from the immediate chaos to the future, fostering the belief that by taking small, steady steps each day, a solution will eventually come into sight. This spirit is timeless and does not recognize the concept of retirement. In Japan, the wisdom and superior skill that accompany age and experience are highly valued, particularly in the preservation of traditional arts. This is exemplified by the elderly artisans of the Tohoku region, who continue to craft beautiful kokeshi dolls with unwavering dedication. Their continued labor serves as a reminder that regardless of the scale of the difficulty, from the meticulous carving of a doll to the rebuilding of a shattered city, there is always a chance to create a better world if one refuses to give up.
Chapter 13. Kibo, Hope. One of the most compelling stories in Greek mythology is that of Pandora's box, a narrative that speaks deeply to the human condition. The tale begins with Zeus, who was furious with Prometheus for sharing the secret of fire with humanity. In his anger, Zeus devised a plan for revenge, introducing Prometheus's brother, Epimetheus, to a beautiful woman named Pandora.
The two were married, and as a wedding gift, Zeus presented them with a box, commanding them never to open it. He did this knowing full well that Pandora possessed a natural, insatiable curiosity. Inevitably, she could not resist the temptation and opened the lid. From within the box, every imaginable evil escaped, invading the mortal world for all eternity. Pandora rushed to close it, but it was too late for the evils that had fled. However, she saw that at the bottom of the box, one thing remained: Elpis, the spirit of hope. It was the only good thing contained within, and because it was the last to be released, it gave rise to the expression that there is always hope. This sentiment has guided the Japanese people since the very beginnings of their history. Constrained by the limited natural resources of their islands and living under the constant threat of earthquakes and tsunamis, it has been inevitable that they would face the evils of the world time and again. Yet, just as they have never been without difficulties, they have never lost the power of hope, known in Japanese as kibo. This word carries a weight of resilience and expectation, serving as a light during the darkest times. The concept of kibo has even transcended the earthly realm to become the name of the Japanese module of the International Space Station. Designed to carry out experiments in space and built by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, this module has been in orbit for more than 25 years. High above the atmosphere, it continues to circle the Earth, giving hope to science and helping humanity to progress, serving as a testament to what can be achieved when we look upward. Hope can be experienced in much smaller, more personal ways as well. When feelings of depression arise, a simple remedy can be found in stepping out into the garden to gaze at the stars. There is a comfort in imagining that someplace high up there, the kibo module is steadily circling the planet, utterly oblivious to the evils and turmoil of the globe at its feet. Humans are all weak at times. We fail, make mistakes, and bad things inevitably happen to us. But hope is something that no one can ever take away. It remains there as a guiding star whenever it is needed, and it is crucial never to abandon it. When spirits are low, turning one's gaze to the starry sky can be a powerful reminder of this enduring presence, prompting the question of what little rituals or routines others might hold for finding that glimmer of hope left at the bottom of the box. Chapter 14. The Man Who Planted Trees. In 1953, the French author Jean Giono published a short story that captures the very essence of Ganbatte. Upon its release, many readers were convinced that the tale of Elziard Bouffier, the resolute shepherd who serves as the narrative's protagonist, was a factual account. It was only 4 years later that the author took it upon himself to clarify matters, sending a letter to the Dean City Council to debunk the idea that the character was real. Yet this admission does nothing to diminish the power of the story, which vividly illustrates how a utopian vision can be transformed into reality through constant, unwavering effort over a long period of time. The story opens in 1910, following a young man exploring the wilderness of Provence. He finds himself in a desolate, treeless valley where the only sign of life is wild lavender growing among the ruins of an abandoned village. Parched and weary, he comes upon a dry stream, and it is there that he encounters a shepherd who leads him to a spring to recover. Curious as to why a middle-aged man would choose to live in such a lifeless, forsaken place, the young hiker listens as Elziard Bouffier shares his history. After the loss of his wife, Bouffier resolved to redeem the ruined landscape by covering the valley with leafy forests. His method is simple and solitary. With nothing but his bare hands and a staff, he punches holes into the hard ground and drops in acorns he has carefully gathered. Moved by the shepherd's silent utopian labor, the hiker eventually leaves and returns home.
It is not until 1920, shell-shocked from the horrors of the First World War, that the narrator, often interpreted as a stand-in for Giono himself, returns to the spot where that pleasant conversation had occurred. To his astonishment, the once arid land is now teeming with saplings, their roots drawing up water that has begun to flow through the streams once more. The shepherd has not faltered. In fact, he has abandoned sheep herding because the animals were eating his young trees, switching instead to beekeeping to protect his work. Impressed by this miraculous change, the narrator vows to visit the former shepherd every year. For more than 40 years, Elziard Bouffier continues his work, planting trees one hole at a time, day after day, until the valley is utterly transfigured into a magnificent forest bursting with life. Eventually, more than 10,000 people migrate to the area, drawn by the beauty of the landscape, completely unaware that it is the result of Bouffier's constant secret labor. To ensure the preservation of this work, the narrator reveals the truth to the authorities, who subsequently place the woods under official protection. The account concludes in 1945 with a final visit to the man who planted trees, who passes away 2 years later, having given his life profound meaning by healing the earth. The story serves as a beautiful and enduring example of the immense impact one person can have on the world when they apply the spirit of Ganbatte.
Chapter 15. Tama the Cat. My own cat goes by the name Tama, a choice made without any specific reasoning other than its ubiquity. It is one of the most common feline names in Japan, favored for being easy to pronounce and impossible to forget. However, the most renowned holder of this name was not a house pet, but a station master who served at the Kishi train station in Kinagawa from 2007 until her passing in 2015. The story of this famous calico began in 2006 amidst a crisis for the Kishigawa train line in the Wakayama prefecture. Ridership had dwindled to such low levels that the railway could no longer sustain operations, leading the company to a purely financial decision. The line and all its stations would be closed. The local residents, however, refused to accept this demise. In a display of communal resilience, they rejected the company's decision and volunteered to watch over the stations free of charge, ensuring the line could remain operational. It was in this spirit of creative defiance that the people of Kishi Station proposed an unusual solution, appointing a female cat named Tama as their station master. The railway company not only accepted this unorthodox proposal, but formalized it with a contract, which the feline signed using a paw print. In exchange for residing in the station hut and donning the official station master's cap, Tama was compensated with pet food. She was even supported by a staff of 2 other cats, Chibi and Miko, who served as her assistants. The impact of this decision was immediate and profound. From the moment Tama assumed her role, passenger numbers on the line surged by more than 10%, revitalizing both the railway's finances and the local tourism industry. Grateful executives eventually named her honorary chairman, and in a gesture that cemented her legacy, the station was renovated to feature a roof and windows designed to resemble a cat's eyes. When Tama passed away in 2015, her funeral was attended by over 3,000 mourners, and a Shinto shrine was erected near the station to honor her as a kami, or deity. Her legacy continued through her successors, Ni Tama, soon Tama Tama, and starting in 2020, Yan Tama, proving that the solution was not merely a novelty, but a sustainable shift in the community spirit. This turnaround illustrates the profound power of Ganbatte, the refusal to give up even when the situation seems hopeless. Before the residents intervened, the company was ready to throw in the towel, yet the community believed in the potential for a solution outside the ordinary. By hiring a cat instead of a person, they saved the day through imagination rather than traditional logic. Life often presents situations where we feel bogged down and inclined to surrender, usually because stress blinds us to our own creative potential. The story of Kishi Station serves as a reminder that when we feel there is no way out, a little more ganbatte and a shift in perspective can reveal wonderful, unexpected solutions. This philosophy of resilience finds a physical counterpart in the art of kintsugi, or golden joinery. This traditional practice involves repairing broken porcelain or pottery using powdered gold or silver to highlight rather than hide the fractures. The message inherent in kintsugi is simple yet transformative. That which is broken need not remain so. Instead, an object can be evolved into something more meaningful and often superior to its original form. It is the care, diligence, and intent poured into the repair, not merely the precious metal, that elevates the object.
Just as a failing train line was transformed into a celebrated cultural icon through communal effort, kintsugi teaches that our breaks and repairs are not scars to be concealed, but essential parts of a new, more beautiful whole.
Chapter 16. Ganbatte and Wabi-sabi. The concept of wabi-sabi, often translated as the beauty of imperfection, extends far beyond a simple aesthetic ideal and is deeply rooted in the philosophy of Japanese art. At its core, wabi-sabi emulates the natural world by acknowledging three fundamental truths: nothing is perfect, nothing is complete, and nothing lasts forever. It is the second of these truths, that nothing is ever truly complete, that forms a vital connection to the spirit of Ganbatte. If one believes that their work, whether in art, a profession, or personal development, is finished, they have succumbed to complacency, and likely laziness, states of being that are diametrically opposed to the values of Ganbatte. This philosophy of perpetual beginning is echoed in the final words of the Buddha, who declared, "I am always starting." By this, he meant that the desire to learn and perfect oneself is an endless journey. Nothing ever truly concludes, because everything exists in a constant state of flux, much like nature itself. This reality offers a limitless scope for improvement, providing a vast space in which to undertake Herculean tasks. This principle holds true not only for personal evolution, but also for artistic mastery, a sentiment captured by Leonardo da Vinci when he observed that a work of art is never finished, only abandoned. To illustrate the weight of this continuous evolution, one might look to a short story titled The Reunion from Stories of Mr. Tainer by the German author Bertolt Brecht. In the story, a man who has not seen Mr. K for a long time greets him by saying, "You haven't changed a bit, sir." Upon hearing this, Mr. K turns pale and exclaims, "Oh!" This reaction expresses a deep pain born from the absence of Ganbatte. While the acquaintance likely intended to compliment Mr. K's physical appearance, Mr. K interprets the remark as an indictment of his character, suggesting that he has become bogged down and made no effort to progress since their last meeting. To remain unchanged is to have lived without the drive to improve. Ultimately, wabi-sabi teaches that all humans are born imperfect and will never reach a state of total completion, because life itself is transient. However, the transient nature of existence offers the opportunity to progress from one moment to the next. Even if life is fleeting, the potential for growth remains, much like a humble flower that emerges from the moss, to gift the world with its color, even for only a single day.
Chapter 17. Yayoi Kusama. Fortune decides many of the defining factors of our existence before we even draw our first breath: the geography and society we are born into, the health and genetics we inherit, and the family that raises us. Yet, the narratives that truly captivate the human imagination are rarely those of individuals born into favorable surroundings with a clear, unobstructed path laid out before them. Instead, we are drawn to the stories of those who began life at a significant disadvantage but managed to grow through their struggles, demonstrating to the rest of humanity that everything is possible. These are the individuals who make Ganbatte the central pillar of their lives, proving that when faced with a setback, there is no place for excuses. One of the most profound examples of this spirit is the artist Yayoi Kusama. Her work is not only celebrated for its beauty and innovation, but is deeply revered for the resilience woven into her biography. For Kusama, art is not merely a profession, but a method of survival, an escape from the severe difficulties of her reality. She has confessed that without art, she would have ended her life long ago. Born in Matsumoto, Nagano in 1922, she came from a wealthy family that was nonetheless devoid of love. As a young girl, she sought solace in painting and writing poetry, but her mother, rather than nurturing this creativity, subjected her to physical and psychological mistreatment. The domestic atmosphere was further poisoned by an absent father engaged in extramarital affairs, indiscretions of which both mother and daughter were painfully aware.
By her 10th birthday, Kusama began experiencing hallucinations, seeing the world overrun by fields of colored dots and flowers. This marked the onset of the schizophrenia that would accompany her throughout her life. Her teenage years were consumed by the war, during which she worked in a military factory sewing parachutes. But once the conflict ended, she began to channel her pain into highly creative expression. By the age of 21, she was exhibiting abstract artwork in galleries across Matsumoto and Tokyo. Her compulsion to create was boundless. She painted on canvases, walls, floors, and household objects, transforming the physical world around her into a frame for her vision. A defining characteristic of her work is the proliferation of polka dots in all colors and sizes. When critics inquired about this motif, she explained that she did not see them merely as dots or circles, but as infinite networks. This aesthetic was a direct transcription of her hallucinations. She would visualize herself in a room of flowered wallpaper, only to look down and see her hands, arms, and everything around her consumed by the same pattern. In her mind, her self-identity was obliterated by this repeating, infinite design. Seeking to expand her horizons, she moved to the United States at the age of 27, where she collaborated with American artists and was catapulted to international fame, eventually staging a show at New York's Museum of Modern Art in 1969. However, as her health problems worsened, she made the decision in 1977 to return to Japan and voluntarily check herself into a mental hospital in Shinjuku, Tokyo. She has lived there ever since, yet she has never allowed her condition to halt her output. Even now, in her 90s, she refuses to take a day's rest, continuing to create daily in a studio located just beside the hospital. It is a discipline fueled by a bomb-proof ganbatte. The power of her work strikes the viewer with immediate force. One might recall encountering her iconic yellow pumpkin covered in black circles on the beach of Naoshima Island at dusk, an image that is at once astounding and intriguing. Such works compel the observer to understand the mind behind them. Whether viewing her giant flower sculptures at the Matsumoto City Museum or her permanent exhibitions in Karizawa and Tokyo, one is swept away by the worlds created by an artist who never had it easy. A visit to the Yayoi Kusama Museum in Shinjuku reveals the depth of her struggle, the daily battle with mental illness, the trauma of an abusive childhood, and the loneliness of the war years. Despite these immense handicaps, she never gave up, ushering in a new style of Japanese art that has influenced the international community. Her story serves as a testament to how life's crises can be transformed into opportunities, and how the very traits that make us feel like ugly ducklings, the things we fear make us compare unfavorably to others, can ultimately be what makes us unique, powerful, and distinct from the rest.
Chapter 18. The Maneki Neko's Twin Laws. The tireless movement of the lucky cat is a popular symbol of Ganbatte. This iconic figure, often found at the entrance of shops and restaurants, communicates through the position of its raised paw. When the left paw is lifted, it is inviting customers to step into a business, whereas a raised right paw is intended to attract money and good luck. Often, the figure also wears a bell around its neck to scare away evil spirits. The name itself reveals its purpose. Neko means cat in Japanese, and maneki comes from the verb maneku, meaning to invite someone in. Thus, the Maneki Neko literally translates as the cat inviting people to come in. The origin of this beloved figure is believed to be rooted in a story from the Edo period. There was once a cat called Tama, a name shared by many beloved pets, who lived on the porch of a temple situated to the west of Tokyo, positioned opposite a great tree.
One stormy day, a traveler ran to take shelter under the tree to escape the downpour. From the safety of the porch, Tama began to warn him, waving its paw again and again. Puzzled by the feline's strange gestures, the man left his shelter to approach the cat. At that precise moment, a great lightning bolt struck the tree, burning it to a crisp along with everything around it. Grateful to the cat that had just saved his life, the traveler pledged to be a patron of the temple for the rest of his days. There is another, perhaps less dramatic, but equally poignant story about the origin of the Maneki Neko, starring a woman named Imada. She was so destitute that she was forced to abandon her feline friend because she could no longer afford to buy food for it. One night, the cat reappeared to her in a dream and instructed her to make a clay figure of it, promising that this image would help attract the good luck that had been absent from her life. The poor woman paid heed to the dream and, with her own hands, sculpted the cat figure with a raised paw. Upon seeing it, a passerby insisted on buying it, convincing her that the oracle in her dream was correct. From then on, Imada began to make Maneki Neko figures and never again went hungry. While this second story may be less poetic than the tale of Tama and the lightning bolt, it serves as a powerful personification of the modern law of attraction. Many people never acquire what they desire simply because they do not dare to ask for it, quite unlike the cat who conspicuously beckons to money and visitors without shame. According to experts, the original source of this law of attraction is found in one of the 7 principles of the Kybalion, formulated by the mysterious Hermes Trismegistus. The principle of mentalism states that everything in the universe is a mental creation and that humans can create their own reality through their thoughts. To effectively activate this law of attraction, modern-day masters recommend a specific progression of internal work. It begins with finding out exactly what one wants and asking the universe for it. This must be followed by focusing one's thoughts on that desire through feelings of enthusiasm and gratitude, and subsequently behaving as though the desire has already been achieved. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, one must be open to receiving it. It is this final point where many struggle. Countless people spend their lives lacking love, money, or success because, in the depths of their souls, they do not believe they deserve what they long for. The Maneki Neko demonstrates that it is honorable to insistently ask for what you desire. As the Gospel of Matthew advises, one must ask to be given, seek to find, and knock for the door to be opened. Therefore, the first law of the Maneki Neko is to be open to receiving. The second law is to be constant, to possess Ganbatte. As an Arab proverb suggests, he who calls repeatedly eventually enters. Ultimately, while the Maneki Neko is popularly known as a lucky cat, it is more accurately a beckoning cat. The key to its power is that it knows what it wants and does not fear asking for it. Prosperity and patronage do not appear by chance, they are invited. We must first identify our goals and then proceed with the confidence that they are achievable. If we can welcome the challenge and work toward the goal with the spirit of Ganbatte, we embody the true nature of the beckoning cat, creating our own fortune through clarity and persistence.
Chapter 19. The most important muscle. When we visualize a sculptor, a pianist, a poet, or any person devoted to the arts, we often imagine someone swept away by a pure, unbidden current of inspiration. Yet, as Picasso famously noted, while inspiration certainly exists, it must find you at work. Without the driving force of Ganbatte, any creative project is destined to remain nothing more than a collection of abstract ideas and good intentions. It is this persistent spirit that serves as the fuel for talent, allowing latent potential to finally unfurl into reality. This truth became evident during the narrator's first attempt to write a book. It was a deeply personal project, one not originally intended for publication, yet finishing it became a crucial test of self-worth. To achieve this, a rigid structure was necessary.
The author decided to write by hand, utilizing a fountain pen and a thick notebook, and carved out a fixed schedule amidst a busy life of teaching morning and evening classes. Each day, the hours between 2:30 and 4:30 p.m. were consecrated entirely to this purpose, turning a creative ambition into a disciplined routine. During those hours, the author would sit at the kitchen table accompanied by a steaming pot of sencha tea, committed to the task regardless of mood or motivation. Writing a book of over 100 pages proved to be less like a sprint and more like a marathon, a test of endurance where maintaining pace matters more than speed. The body often rebelled against this stillness, urging the writer to go outside, enjoy the weather, meet friends at a cafe, or simply take a nap. However, Ganbatte consistently won out over these temptations. It is often said that the most important muscle a writer must exercise is the backside, simply by remaining in the chair until the work is done. Frequently, the session would begin with stagnation. While sipping tea, the writer would stare at the blank page, eyes drifting to the window to watch a passing cloud. Determination alone kept the author in the chair, rereading the previous day's work and lazily scratching out the first few lines of the new session. This internal protest could last for half an hour or more, a struggle to overcome the inertia of the mind and body. Yet, invariably, a shift would occur. Much like the Buddha meditating beneath the fig tree, a moment of total immersion would arrive, unexpected and consuming, like falling into a dream. In this state, words and phrases began to flow autonomously, the writer becoming merely a vehicle for the narrative. The kitchen surroundings dissolved, replaced by the landscapes of the story, and time ceased to exist. When the alarm eventually signaled the end of the session, it often revealed that an hour more than intended had passed in what felt like a flash. Looking down at 4 or 5 new pages, the writer felt a surge of pride and happiness, eager to continue the next day. It is this disciplined practice, the daily application of Ganbatte, that ultimately transforms a dreamer into a writer.
Chapter 20. The 10 Ganbatte Rules for Writers. The world around us is a reservoir of stories waiting to be told, provided one knows how to look and listen. The first rule for any writer is to prick up their ears, paying close attention to the unfolding events of daily life, the conversations of others, and the texture of one's own dreams and experiences. By training the writer's eye to perceive these details, the ordinary becomes a source of endless inspiration. However, these fleeting sparks of creativity must be caught before they fade. If an idea is not written down, it is likely to be lost forever, so it is essential to record everything that comes to mind in a notebook or a dedicated file. As one continues to investigate and gather material, a critical mass is eventually reached. At that point, the chaotic notes can be ordered and shaped, revealing the outline of a future book. To navigate the long journey of composition, it helps to visualize the destination clearly. Imagine the work as a finished product sitting on a bookshop shelf, complete with a title, cover art, and a publisher's imprint. Writing as though the book is already a reality within a specific collection helps establish the correct tone and maintains motivation. This vision must be supported by concrete discipline, specifically by setting a weekly objective. Whether the commitment is a page a day or a chapter a week, it must be a tangible goal aimed at a definitive finishing line. Without a completion date, a project lacks the structural strength to survive the inevitable challenges of the creative process. Writing need not be a solitary act of sheer will. It is often beneficial to find witnesses to the process. Enlisting 1 or 2 reader friends to follow your progress can provide the necessary external pressure to honor your commitment, while also offering valuable feedback on what works and what requires improvement. Yet, the physical reality of writing remains solitary and stationary. As the publicist and author Gabriel Garcia de Oro suggests,
The most important muscle a writer must exercise is their backside. Success requires setting a fixed schedule and sticking to it, refusing to rise from the chair even when the temptation to do something else becomes overwhelming. A common trap for aspiring authors is the tendency to obsess over perfection too early, leading to paralysis by analysis. To avoid this, one should prioritize moving forward instead of perpetually re-correcting. A practical approach is to limit review to the work done the previous day before pressing on, rather than circling back to the beginning. The goal is to reach the end, even if the draft is imperfect. There will always be time to apply the final touches once the manuscript is complete. After this self-revision is finished, it is wise to find a good copy editor. Investing in a professional to make final corrections and suggestions can determine whether a manuscript remains an amateur effort or becomes a publishable book. Once the work is polished, it is time to explore all paths for sharing it with the world. This involves sending the manuscript to literary competitions, agencies, and publishers, always preceded by a professional inquiry, or reaching out to personal contacts within the literary sphere. If these traditional routes do not yield a publisher, one must not become downhearted or let the manuscript languish in a drawer. Instead, reveal the project to the world by becoming your own editor. Platforms like Amazon allow authors to offer their work globally, free of charge or for profit. History has shown that many bestsellers began this way, or even as blog posts, proving that the most important step is simply ensuring the story finds its readers.
Chapter 21. Shuhari, the Mastery of the Takumi. Building upon the discipline required to appreciate constant beginnings, we encounter Shuhari, a concept deeply rooted in the traditions of martial arts, no theater, and the tea ceremony. While its origins are specific, Shuhari is far more than a word. It is a comprehensive philosophy condensed into 3 characters that guide the process of learning, generating ideas, and activating creativity. It serves as an extremely powerful tool for those seeking to become a master, or takumi, at anything in life. To visualize the essence of Shuhari, one can imagine 3 concentric circles, a structure that dictates a specific path of growth. We must begin in the center and can only expand outward once the inner space is fully realized. The central circle is Shu, a character whose literal meaning is to protect or obey. In the context of learning, this stage insists that the first and most important task is to absorb tradition and master the cornerstones of a discipline. Only when this foundation is solidified can one move to the middle circle, Ha, which translates to digress or explore. Here, having mastered the basics, the learner is permitted to break with tradition, question the established rules, and explore freely. The final, outermost circle is Ri, meaning to go away or strike out on one's own. This represents a transcendent step toward a higher plane of existence, where the learner creates something entirely new. At this stage, the artist and the art merge into one, leading to discoveries that lie beyond the ego. Importantly, true masters residing in the Ri circle continue to encompass everything held within the inner circles. They have internalized the experience without forgetting the fundamentals. To understand how this philosophy manifests practically, consider the art of photography. In the Shu stage, a photographer learns the mechanics of the camera, the physics of light, the power of color, and the rigid rules of framing. This phase requires repetition, taking thousands of photos over months or years until the technical process is second nature. Moving to the Ha phase, the photographer, now technically proficient, might find their work acceptable but indistinguishable from others. This is the moment to question the basics, perhaps defying standard composition rules to test personal ideas. Finally, in the Ri phase, a unique style emerges. The camera, the surroundings, the subject, and the photographer's conscience magically join together, allowing them to shoot almost automatically. Much like how a listener can instantly distinguish a Glenn Gould interpretation from one by Lang Lang, the photographer's work becomes unmistakably their own. Often, when observing established artists, there is a temptation to believe they achieved expertise through magic, prompting a desire to emulate their freedom immediately. However, a closer study reveals that even the greatest maestros integrated the three circles sequentially. Picasso's early pencil sketches, for instance, are replete with corrections and strictly adhere to the fundamentals of drawing. Only after years of rigorous learning did he dare to innovate and fracture reality into a new style. The urge to skip the learning process and jump straight to the attractive, innovative stage is a common human impulse, yet doing so invariably fails. One cannot successfully enter Ha and defy the rules without first completing Shu and mastering those very rules. This friction is evident when piano students attempt to learn pieces far above their current level. They not only fail to learn the music, but often succumb to discouragement. There is a delicate balance between the difficulty of a task and the satisfaction derived from it, a balance described by the concept of flow. A person practicing in a state of flow is operating within the correct Shuhari circle for their ability level, whereas a lack of flow suggests a misalignment. The most effective way to navigate these circles is under the guidance of a master, a sensei, mentor, or, to use a cinematic parallel, a Jedi master. In the Shu circle, the student must strictly follow the master's teachings. As they transition to Ha, they may begin to challenge the master, until finally, in the Ri phase, the student surpasses the teacher and becomes a master in their own right. Ultimately, Shuhari is not merely a tool for creating art, but a guide for self-transformation. By assimilating these circles, one evolves into a completely different person from the novice who began the journey. The philosophy demands that we begin with the fundamentals and repeat them as often as necessary, employing the spirit of Ganbatte to resist the impatience of moving too fast. If we rush to leave a circle before we are ready, we trade flow for frustration, slowing our progress rather than accelerating it. We must remain conscious of our current level, never feeling diminished by those who know more, but rather taking comfort in the knowledge that every great master once walked the same path through the circles of Shuhari.
Chapter 22. The World's Longest-Lasting Companies. In 2008, a study conducted by the Bank of Korea sought to identify businesses across the globe that had weathered the storms of history for more than 2 centuries and remained in independent operation. The findings revealed a staggering concentration of resilience in one specific corner of the world. Of the 5,586 companies identified, 3,146, accounting for 56% of the total, were Japanese, while Germany held a respectable second place with 837 companies. The disparity highlighted Japan's unique status as the world leader in creating organizations capable of surviving the passage of centuries. When examining what these enduring Japanese and German enterprises share with other long-lasting companies around the world, a common thread emerges. The majority are family-run. In these businesses, the specific knowledge required to operate effectively is carefully handed down from one generation to the next, creating a lineage of expertise that is difficult to replicate. This structure suggests that even the most destructive forces of history, such as wars and natural disasters, cannot easily extinguish a business as long as the knowledge and the family's motivations survive. It is here that the spirit of Ganbatte plays a crucial role, keeping these ventures afloat on the rough seas of time by fostering a tenacity that transcends mere profit. Another defining characteristic of these centenarian companies is that they often belong to sectors that have undergone little fundamental change over time, such as hospitality, construction, vineyards, and distilleries. the core principles of these industries remain stable, allowing successful businesses to maintain their focus on what is most important, the enduring elements of their craft, while simultaneously adapting to the times and perfecting the finer details. A prime example of this balance is the Nishiyama Onsen Keiyunkan, a Japanese hotel founded in the Yamanashi Prefecture in the year 705. Recognized as the oldest enterprise in the world, it continues to operate today, more than 1,300 years later. The Nishiyama Onsen Keiyunkan features 37 rooms and has adapted to the modern era by offering amenities such as Wi-Fi. However, the current owners understand that these modernizations are not the source of their longevity. The key to the hotel's success remains exactly what it was over a millennium ago: the hot spring baths fed by waters spouting directly from the mountainside. Renowned for their healing powers, these springs once attracted historic figures like the daimyo Takeda Shingen and the shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu. If asked what makes the hotel special, the owners would answer without hesitation that it is the volcanic hot springs, not the internet connection. They recognized the difference between a useful upgrade and the immutable heart of their existence. This distinction offers a profound lesson for any important project or business in one's life. To build something that endures, one must ask, what is the single constant that will not change in the next year, 2 years, or even 2 decades? Identifying these cornerstones allows one to remain focused, avoiding the distraction of short-lived novelties. For a writer, the publishing industry may be in a state of upheaval, shifting toward digital formats and independent platforms. While these are valid considerations, getting lost in the logistics of distribution can be paralyzing. The fundamental question, the hot spring of the profession, is simply whether one is writing to the best of their abilities to bring something positive to the reader. By anchoring oneself in the enduring value of a passion or profession, it becomes possible to navigate a changing world without losing the essence of what matters most.
Chapter 23. The Kaizen Method. The concept of Kaizen is deeply rooted in the Japanese language, formed by combining the words kai, meaning change, and zen, meaning good. Together, they signify a change to improve, a philosophy best understood as continual improvement. Unlike the Western emphasis on final results, the spirit of Kaizen focuses intensely on the process itself. It is driven by a simple yet powerful motto: today better than yesterday, tomorrow better than today. This perspective transforms the method into more than just a business strategy. It becomes a lifestyle philosophy for facing daily problems with incremental, steady progress. Management consultant Masaaki Imai, in his seminal work on the subject, described Kaizen not merely as continuous improvement, but as a pervasive attitude involving everyone in an organization, from the highest managers to the newest employees. It encompasses everything from small, barely noticeable adjustments to drastic, radical innovations. One of the most prominent standard-bearers of this philosophy is the automobile manufacturer Toyota, which places Kaizen at the center of its corporate values. By continually refining operations and driving evolution, Toyota achieved the feat of producing automobiles with the lowest defect rates in the world. Their primary strategy was the elimination of muda, or the superfluous, anything not constituting the absolute bare minimum required for production in terms of labor, materials, and time. Central to this system is the 5S process, a set of principles designed to enhance efficiency that can easily be applied to personal life. The process begins with seiri, or sort, where employees separate the necessary from the unnecessary, discarding what is not needed. This is followed by seitan, or systematize, which involves organizing the remaining essential items to improve workflow. The third step is seiso, or shine, which mandates that workers keep their workstations clean to ensure clarity and safety.
To make these practices permanent, seiketsu, or standardize, introduces rules and routines that turn these steps into habits. Finally, shitsuke, or sustain, emphasizes the discipline required to maintain this orderliness over the long term. Toyota expanded this ideology with two additional pillars, challenge and genshi genbutsu. The former encourages a long-term vision that pushes individuals outside their comfort zones to face difficulties courageously. The latter, translating literally to real place, real object, dictates that when a problem arises, one must go to the source to observe it directly rather than relying on third-party reports. This empirical approach ensures that any improvement is grounded in reality. Ultimately, the Kaizen philosophy offers a way to give meaning and method to human effort, regardless of the specific level of excellence being pursued. This respect for the method is mirrored by a respect for history, just as the Toyota Commemorative Museum of Industry and Technology pays tribute to the evolution of industry. Recognizing the past is essential for future success. Acknowledging the foundation laid by predecessors allows for progress, as remembering who we were is an intrinsic part of moving forward. Yet, movement also requires stillness. The practice of meditation, whether through formal zazen or simply by maintaining mindful focus on daily tasks like washing dishes or painting a wall, quiets the mind to face upcoming challenges. By pouring all of one's energy into the present action, the mundane becomes meditative. While goals may lie in the future, life is lived from moment to moment, and the essence of Kaizen suggests that each step should be savored in itself rather than serving only as a bridge to a destination.
Chapter 24. Meditation, Passing Clouds. Zen monks are renowned for their unwavering concentration and the precision inherent in every movement they make. However, this dedication to mindfulness is not confined to the zendo, the meditation room where they practice zazen, or seated meditation, but extends into every facet of their daily existence. When a monk engages in a humble task, such as washing a potato in the kitchen, that potato becomes their entire universe. As the trickling water rinses away the impurities from the vegetable's brown skin, the monk's 5 senses are directed solely toward this act, elevating a simple chore to the most significant event in the world. By doing just one thing at a time, concentrating fully and pouring their whole heart into the action, the monk effectively meditates through daily labor, carrying the spirit of zazen beyond the cushion and into the routine of day-to-day life. Such discipline does not manifest spontaneously for those living in a world defined by distractions and multitasking. The untrained mind is accustomed to leaping frantically from branch to branch, akin to a restless bird, or what Zen practitioners refer to as monkey mind. To soothe this agitation, one may begin with the practice of basic breathing. It is not necessary to assume the lotus position like the Buddha, who will appear in the subsequent chapter at a pivotal moment in his journey, but one can simply sit in a chair with a straight back or lie on a bed, provided there is no risk of falling asleep. The exercise is simple yet demands focus. Concentrate exclusively on the sensation of air flowing in and out of the nostrils. Breathe slowly, deeply, and softly, observing how the air enters incrementally to fill the lungs and lift the collarbones, and then how it exits until the lungs are completely empty. By focusing only on one's own breathing, much like the monk absorbed in washing the potato, one frees the self from extraneous thoughts that act as interference against the radio waves of silence. Eventually, ideas will surface, particularly in the beginning. The instruction is neither to reject nor cling to them. Judging thoughts as good or bad breaks the state of meditation. Instead, simply observe these mental fluctuations as they flow across the screen of the mind, viewing them merely as passing clouds in a blue sky. When an interference arises, label it merely as a thought,
let it drift by, and return attention to the breath. These clouds are not one's true essence. The true essence is the vast, unshakable blue sky through which the clouds pass before fading away, remaining constant beneath the transient weather of the mind.
Chapter 25. Buddha Under the Tree. The story of Siddhartha Gautama is widely recognized as a journey of profound transformation. He forsook his family and the comforts of courtly life to dedicate himself to a single consuming purpose, finding an end to human suffering. To achieve this, he spent many years traveling and subjecting his body to severe hardships before eventually discovering the middle way. Beyond the various encounters on his travels, however, the defining moment that truly tested his Ganbatte, his persistence and determination, occurred beneath the Bodhi tree. In the life cycle of any significant project one undertakes, there inevitably arrives a crucial juncture where one must decide the depth of their desire for the objective at hand. This pivotal threshold is mirrored in the experiences of a doctoral student who devotes their final months to tenaciously refining a thesis, a runner who intensifies their regimen for a marathon after a year of training, or an entrepreneur making the final preparations for a startup that holds the potential for greatness. 2.5 millennia ago, Siddhartha Gautama chose a specific fig tree in the north of present-day India as his own touchstone for this kind of ultimate resolve. He sat to meditate under what would later be known as the Bodhi tree, making a solemn vow not to rise until he had attained enlightenment. At 35 years old, an age that, in his era, could easily signify that more than half a lifetime had already passed, he faced a formidable challenge. After remaining motionless for several days, his followers, believing he had descended into madness, abandoned him. Even when a violent storm erupted around him, he did not desist. He continued his endeavor for 49 days, never giving up, until he finally achieved enlightenment and transformed into the Buddha, a title meaning the one who is awake. Through this ordeal, he resolved the problem of human suffering by articulating what are known as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth establishes that suffering exists, as he described, birth, aging, illness, death, union with the unpleasant, separation from the pleasant, and unattainable desires all constitute suffering that must be understood. The second truth identifies the source of this suffering as desire. When humans long for pleasures, possessions, or for things to occur or cease, they feed their own anguish, meaning desire must be abandoned. The third truth posits that desire can indeed cease, and with it, suffering ends. This is why the practice involves letting go and liberating oneself from the yearnings that cause pain, realizing the cessation of suffering. Finally, the fourth truth reveals that there is a path to liberation, which, when trodden, leads to nirvana and the final end of suffering. This narrative serves as a timeless reminder that any great project, whether spiritual or secular, demands constant, unwavering effort to bring it to fruition, particularly when one faces the difficult final stretch of the challenge. Chapter 26. Katana. Aim for Beauty. The sword is fundamentally a human creation designed to kill, a fact that bears no dispute. Yet, like any element of high craftsmanship, it possesses the potential to transcend its lethal purpose and become a work of art. This is particularly true of the Japanese katana, which in modern times is regarded less as a weapon of war and more as a powerful symbol and talisman. A pervasive superstition holds that katanas are capable of banishing ma, evil or evil spirits, and that the protective capacity of the blade is directly correlated to its quality. Even today, this belief persists to the extent that many Japanese families purchase a katana upon the birth of a new family member, placing it in a prominent position within the home to safeguard the child for life, eventually passing it down as a cherished heirloom through generations. This spiritual reverence has profoundly influenced the evolution of the blade, compelling bladesmiths to pursue a style that prioritizes ever-increasing beauty. Without the driving force of this belief, the Japanese katana might have evolved into a purely functional form, shaped solely by the grim objectives of battle or the superficial demands of social status. Instead, these swords have become works of art capable of withstanding the test of time. Indeed, only a trained eye can distinguish between the edge of a blade forged by a master 5 centuries ago and one created by a contemporary artisan. The process requires thousands of sheets of tamagahane, ferrous sand abundant in the Shimane prefecture, which are worked by the smith for months until the desired finish is achieved. The resulting blade edges are durable enough to endure for centuries or even millennia, unrivaled by any other type of sword. Yoshindo Yoshihara represents the living embodiment of this tradition, standing as one of the 30 remaining bladesmiths who make a living exclusively from forging katanas. The craft is a family tradition, with knowledge handed down from fathers to sons, and to learn even the basics, Yoshihara had to understudy his father for decades. Now nearing 80, he is regarded as one of the most valuable artists in Japan, having created several katanas that required years of devoted labor and have since been designated as national treasures. The question arises as to why one would devote months or years of effort to a single katana. For the Japanese bladesmith, the objective is to create something whose beauty can transcend the passing of time. It is a pursuit that reveals a paradox. Apart from the artistic achievement, katanas possess the most lethal and highest quality blade edges known to man precisely because the craftsman spares no effort. What is truly beautiful usually demands great work to create. This principle extends beyond the forge, for humans can instinctively appreciate the effort, passion, and care that have gone into creating something. If one acts quickly, seeking only an easy and functional result, the work will merely scratch the surface, a lack of depth that others will inevitably notice. In this sense, everyone is an artist in their day-to-day life. A clear example can be found in the decision of whether or not to pay special attention when cooking a dish. The difference is palpable to those who sit at the table, for presentation, smell, and taste all count. One chooses whether to cook quickly, merely to feed the body, or to cook with the intent of creating something beautiful, meant to be savored. Whenever possible, the human duty is to aim for beauty. Just as the katana transformed from a mere weapon into a treasure through the bladesmith's elevation to an artist, aiming for beauty in daily tasks can fundamentally alter one's perception of the world and of life itself.
Chapter 27. The Philosophy of Karate. The concept of karate-do, which translates literally to the way of the empty hand, transcends the boundaries of a simple martial art. It is far more than a method for acquiring self-defense skills. It is a profound education for life itself. While modern karate traces its origins to the island of Okinawa, it was Master Gichin Funakoshi who brought it to the main archipelago and opened the first dojo in the 1930s. This first school, known as Shotokan, allowed for the development of a philosophical corpus that imbued the physical practice with the spiritual depth of Bushido, the ancient samurai way of the warrior. These warriors adhered to a strict code of conduct defined by 7 virtues: justice, courage, compassion, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. To understand the weight of these values, one need only look to the story of the 47 Ronin. Between 1701 and 1703, a feudal lord named Asano Naganori was forced to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide, after attacking a high-ranking official, Kira Yoshihisa, who had repeatedly humiliated him. Following Asano's death, his vassals became ronin, samurai without a master. Rather than dispersing, 47 of them pledged to avenge their lord. They waited a year and a half, then assaulted Kira's fortified home, killed him, and offered his head to Asano's grave. Having fulfilled their duty, they surrendered to the authorities. The shogun, moved by their loyalty and adherence to the warrior code, allowed them to die with honor through seppuku beside their master. Master Funakoshi distilled this intense dedication into a guiding principle for karate. The goal is not merely technical skill, but the mastery of being a good, honest member of society. He left behind the Niju-kun, or 20 rules, to preserve this tradition. 5 of these are particularly applicable to any personal endeavor. First, one must know oneself before attempting to know others. Improvement begins internally. Second, the mind must be kept free, much like the Taoist concept of adaptation, unburdened by prejudice. Third, karate is like boiling water. If heat is not constantly applied, it turns cold, a perfect metaphor for ganbatte and the necessity of constant practice. Fourth, one must adapt to the opponent. Just as in combat, life's problems always hold a solution if one is flexible enough to find it. Finally, these precepts must be applied daily, echoing Aristotle's belief that excellence is a habit, not an act.
Chapter 28. Tennis, the Court of Mental Toughness. The discipline found in the dojo has a parallel on the clay courts of tennis. For those who play, it quickly becomes apparent that tennis is a sport where success is dictated as much by mental fortitude as by physical talent. The game is designed such that physical preparation and ability must work in tandem with the capacity to overcome immediate setbacks, as most points are decided by unforced errors. Except in doubles, the player stands alone, bearing the full weight of every decision and outcome. In this solitude, self-trust is paramount. If a player doubts their ability to win, the game is lost before it begins. Relaxation is equally critical, as the precision required to win a point demands a calm mind. This necessity explains the elaborate routines players perform before a serve or between points, rituals designed to free the mind from pressure and reset focus. Whether a player seems to levitate in a trance or shouts to release tension, the goal is to empty the mind and regain concentration. Each point offers a new opportunity, and the greatest players demonstrate resilience by clawing their way back from the brink of defeat, saving match points, or overcoming injuries. A prime example of this mental mastery is Naomi Osaka. After rising to world number 1, she identified 4 keys to her success beyond physical training. The first is confidence. One cannot win a Grand Slam without believing in oneself. The second is serenity, an inner peace that enhances performance. The third is fun, remembering that tennis is, at its heart, a game. The fourth is concentration, ensuring that when the ball is in play, nothing else exists in the mind. Chapter 29. If you don't feel like exercising, Ganbatte. Applying this level of discipline to general fitness often requires a shift in perspective. Woody Allen once famously said that 80% of success is showing up. While the percentage may be an exaggeration, the sentiment captures the essence of consistency. This lesson is often taught in martial arts classes, where masters value the student who simply walks through the door every day over the one who executes high kicks but attends sporadically. In Taekwondo, the concept is known as ine, perseverance. Consider 2 individuals reaching the age of 50. The first exercised intensively until age 30 and then stopped. The second has done only 10 minutes of light exercise daily and taken long walks 3 times a week since their 20s. Inevitably, the second person will be in better health and condition. This consistency is a secret to Japanese longevity. Despite a modern lifestyle, obesity rates remain low partly due to habits like Radio Taiso, a short daily broadcast of calisthenics that exercises pea joints and muscles.
The specific method, whether yoga, tai chi, or walking, matters less than the habit itself. To cultivate this, one must overcome common excuses. If you think you have no time, you must plan for it. If you don't feel like it, whisper "Ganbatte" to yourself and commit to just 5 minutes. Usually, once the body is moving, the resistance fades. If motivation is lacking, create a ritual with a friend. If you believe you aren't the kind of person who exercises, redefine yourself as someone who perseveres. Movement should be prioritized as highly as eating or sleeping.
Chapter 30. The 10 Ganbatte Rules for Fitness. To maintain this momentum throughout life, we can adhere to 10 simple rules of Ganbatte for fitness. First, remember that doing the bare minimum is infinitely better than making grand plans on the sofa. 10 minutes of movement beats 0. Second, do not compare yourself to others. Unless you are a professional athlete, your only competition is your past self. Third, engage in activities you genuinely enjoy. If you dislike a workout, you will eventually quit, so find the exercise that you want to do every day for decades. Fourth, seek a state of flow. If an activity makes time seem to disappear, you have found the right balance of difficulty and engagement. Fifth, do something every day without fail. It need not be exhausting, a walk or a stretch suffices, but the chain of consistency must not be broken. Sixth, train with others. A Ganbatte messaging group or workout partner can provide the accountability needed to show up. Seventh, connect body and mind through breath. Breathing is the bridge that anchors you in the present moment. Eighth, savor the afterglow. Focus on the happiness and relaxation that follow exercise, storing that feeling in your memory to motivate you tomorrow. Ninth, remain open to new things. Humans crave novelty, and a new sport might become a new passion. Finally, the 10th rule is to love your body. Regardless of its current condition, your body is the vessel of your life. By accepting it and treating it with the respect of daily movement, you embody the spirit of Ganbatte. As Bruce Lee noted, traditional methods can make the mind a slave to the past. True mastery allows you to overcome the self of yesterday, winning over your own limitations to achieve excellence. Chapter 31. Miyamoto Musashi. Transform your mind into water. When passing by a small garden, one might pause to observe a shishi-odoshi, a traditional Japanese fountain that is as simple in its mechanics as it is beautiful in its effect. Water trickles patiently into a hollow bamboo stalk until the vessel fills enough to lose its balance. It tips forward, spilling its contents and striking a rock with a distinct hypnotic sound before returning to its upright position to be filled once again. This continuous cycle of filling, emptying, and moving serves as a living meditation on flow and adaptability, recalling the philosophy of Miyamoto Musashi. Perhaps history's most renowned ronin, Musashi mastered both the humanities and the sword, culminating his wisdom in the Book of 5 Rings. Written on 5 separate parchments named for the elements, earth, water, fire, wind, and void, it is the scroll dedicated to water that offers the most profound metaphor for navigating life. Musashi explores the nature of water as a shapeless element that adapts instantaneously to its container. As he wrote, when the spirit takes water as its basis, it becomes like the element itself, sometimes a gentle trickle, other times a wild sea, but always adopting the shape of its receptacle. While modern life rarely demands that we face opponents in duels with katanas, the friction of daily existence remains. Our instinct is often to confront difficulties head-on, seeking immediate resolution through conflict. Yet this rigidity frequently leads to frustration rather than success. The better path is to emulate water. When it pours into a container or falls as rain, it may experience turbulence, but it eventually settles into a state of calm, perfectly fitted to its new environment.
This philosophy of fluidity bridges centuries, extending from the samurai era to the modern world. It was famously echoed by Bruce Lee, who studied Musashi's words and integrated them into his own martial arts philosophy. In his most celebrated interview, Lee urged us to be like water making its way through cracks, not assertive but adjusting to the object to find a way around or through it. To empty one's mind and become formless allows one to become the cup, the bottle, or the teapot into which one is poured. Water can flow or it can crash, but it never breaks because it is never rigid. Adaptability, therefore, is a key component of success, requiring a freedom from expectations and an open, centered mind that allows us to move forward rather than remaining motionless in the face of resistance.
Chapter 32: Stoicism and Ganbatte. The temperament of the Japanese people and their society shares a profound resonance with the Hellenistic school of Stoicism. Much like the Stoics, who sought eudaimonia, or happiness, and apatheia, or equanimity, Japanese thought, influenced by Buddhism, Shintoism, and Confucianism, values the ability to accept things as they are without being swept away by desires or emotions. A common misconception is that this philosophy demands the suppression of feeling, requiring one to bear misfortune with a stone-like lack of emotion. In reality, neither the Stoic nor the Buddhist is imperturbable. They feel every emotion, but choose not to let those feelings conquer their reason. One might visualize a negative emotion not as a permanent state, but as a traveler visiting for a cup of tea. The visit may last a while, but eventually the traveler will leave. Consider the metaphor of a rock falling onto a path after a night of torrential rain, blocking the route to a summit. Confronted with this obstacle, one faces a choice. Trying to control the rock falls leads to frustration, stopping every time a rock falls leads to sadness, and returning to the start without facing the hurdle leads to unhappiness. However, the Stoic approach views the obstacle as an opportunity. As Seneca noted, difficulties strengthen the mind just as labor strengthens the body. By going around the rock or finding a new path, we learn and grow. Obstacles, therefore, are merely indicators that the journey is underway, for the only person who never stumbles is the one who never starts walking. To navigate these inevitable hurdles, one can rely on the spirit of Ganbatte, doing one's best, combined with Stoic wisdom. This involves observing what happens and feeling one's heart at each instant, ensuring that negative emotions do not dictate decisions. When misfortune appears, the mission is not to freeze, but to keep moving forward. Crucially, one must distinguish between what can be controlled and what cannot. If a problem is within one's hands, it should be solved, but if it lies outside one's power, worry is futile. This universal wisdom echoes across time and space, from Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius to Confucius and the Buddha, all of whom agreed that our experience of life is shaped not by outside events, but by the thoughts we cultivate and the resilience we choose to embody.
Chapter 33: Your enemy is your best friend. This spirit of resilience and growth through adversity is vividly captured in the manga Ashita no Joe, Tomorrow's Joe, a seminal work of Japanese popular culture published between 1968 and 1973. The narrative follows Joe, an orphan who escapes into the Tokyo suburbs and engages in a street fight with a drunk named Ganbatte. Impressed by the boy's skill, Ganbatte reveals himself as a retired boxer and offers to train him. This initial encounter, where a rival transforms into a mentor, sets the thematic stage for the entire saga. As Joe's career as a professional boxer progresses, he faces increasingly powerful opponents. Yet, rather than crushing him, these formidable rivals force him to grow stronger. In the world of Ashita no Joe, enemies are not merely obstacles, they are catalysts for evolution. In the dramatic conclusion of the series, Joe faces Mendoza in the World Championship. By this point, all of Joe's former rivals have gathered not to despise him, but to cheer him on, having transitioned from enemies to friends through the shared language of struggle. After a brutal fight that pushes him beyond his limits, Joe sits on his stool in the corner, exhausted and brooding. In the final, legendary panel, he passes away without having given up, a mysterious, crooked smile remaining on his lips. This image taught a generation to smile even in the worst circumstances and to view adversaries as teachers. This legacy of finding friendship in rivalry continued in later series like Dragon Ball and Naruto. Goku, the protagonist of Dragon Ball, constantly encounters enemies superior to him, yet he holds no malice. He admires their strength, feels compassion even for those who have wronged him, and eventually converts almost every enemy into a friend. These stories have defined the zeitgeist of modern Japan, embedding the principles of never giving up, learning from rivals, and maintaining good humor in the face of life and death. This cultural attitude was poignantly illustrated after the devastating earthquake and tsunami of 2011, when Dragon Ball author Akira Toriyama released a drawing of Goku and Arale with a simple, powerful message to the victims. In these difficult moments, do everything possible not to give up. Ganbatte kudasai.
Chapter 34. What cannot be seen, but can be felt. The first thing a Japanese visitor often notices when traveling to Europe is the imposing nature of the historic buildings in city centers. These structures are architecturally designed to impress, with grand facades that demand attention. In contrast, the approach in Japan is strikingly different. Facades there tend to be plain and minimalist, with far greater importance placed on the interiors and the secluded areas seen less frequently, such as the back of the house or an inner garden, spaces reserved only for the appreciation of the occupants or their guests. To a Western mindset, expending energy and resources to beautify something that hardly anyone will see might seem like a waste. However, for the Japanese, this attention to the invisible is a manifestation of ganbatte, a form of striving to execute every task with the utmost precision and care, down to the tiniest detail, regardless of whether it is witnessed. Walking through the streets of Kyoto, one passes traditional machiya houses with austere, unpretentious fronts. The doors and windows are often obscured by bamboo cane blinds, signaling to the passerby that the space is private. Yet this concealment only heightens the curiosity about what lies within. An aura of mystery surrounds these homes. Their simple exteriors radiate a subtle beauty born from a love for detail, suggesting that even if something is not visible, its quality can be felt. This concept was profoundly understood by the legendary filmmaker Akira Kurosawa. During the production of his movie Akahige, Red Beard, Kurosawa recreated an entire rural clinic with obsessive fidelity. He insisted that the drawers and cupboards of the set be filled with actual drugs and medical supplies, even though they were never opened on camera. When questioned, Kurosawa explained that a drawer filled with real hypodermic needles possessed the power to make the actors feel and act differently, a nuance of authenticity that theatergoers would ultimately detect. There is a lesson here for the completion of any task. Often when finishing a project, the temptation arises to skip the minor details that will remain unseen. Yet human beings possess an innate ability to sense whether a genuine effort has been made. It is essential not to skimp on the finishing touches. If visitors are expected, one should not merely clean the spare bedroom, but the entire house. If writing a book, the care put into the later chapters matters as much as the first. If dressing for a date, every accessory, including what is worn underneath, carries weight. You will feel the difference, and mysteriously, so will those around you.
Chapter 35. The Stake and the Sprinter. For decades, the world of athletics was held back by the so-called 10-second barrier, a widespread belief that it was physically impossible for a human to run the 100 meters in less than 10 seconds. That definition of impossible was shattered at the 1968 Olympics by the American Jim Hines, who astonished the world with a time of 9.95 seconds. Once this record was set, a psychological wall crumbled. In 1977, Silvio Leonard also ran under 10 seconds, and soon after, it seemed as if athletes collectively realized that Hines' feat was neither unique nor superhuman. A succession of sprinters began to break the barrier. In 1983 alone, Carl Lewis and Calvin Smith both posted sub-10-second times, with Smith breaking the record twice within a month. How does a feat that was once considered impossible suddenly become a standard achievement at world championships? It was not that the athletes suddenly began training significantly harder than their predecessors. The physical effort remained consistent, but Jim Hines had dismantled the mental barrier that insisted it couldn't be done. Once he demonstrated the possibility and others confirmed it was no miracle, the rest of the running world gave themselves permission to run faster. As Marcus Aurelius noted in his Meditations centuries ago, one should not assume a task is outside the reach of human powers simply because it seems difficult. If it is within the purview of man, it is within your possibilities. The first and most formidable barrier always resides in the mind. This psychological phenomenon is poignantly illustrated in a story by the Argentine doctor Jorge Bucay about a circus elephant. During the show, the colossal animal displays immense strength, yet afterward it is chained to a small wooden stake, hammered only an inch or two into the ground. Obviously, this powerful creature could yank the wood out with ease and escape. The reason it does not is that it has been tied to that stake since it was very small. Back then, the baby elephant tried repeatedly to pull it out, but lacked the strength. Eventually, it resigned itself to its fate, accepting the idea, "I cannot." Years later, though it has grown 10 times larger and stronger, it remains bound by that early conviction. It could now free itself effortlessly, but because it believes it cannot, it never tries again. We must ask ourselves how many stakes we harbor in our own lives, old, outdated beliefs of "I cannot" that constitute our own psychological 10-second barriers, and whether we dare to pull them out once and for all.
Chapter 36. Team Hoyt. When discussing the nature of long-term effort and resilience, one cannot overlook the fuel that drives it: love. A testament to this is the extraordinary story of Dick Hoyt and his son, Rick. In 1962, Rick was born with cerebral palsy, unable to walk, speak, or move his hands. Doctors advised his parents that he would live in a vegetative state, but his father, Dick, refused to accept this prognosis. At the age of 12, Rick began communicating using a computer that translated his head movements into text. His first words were not a complaint about his condition, but a cheer for his local hockey team. Go Bruins! Realizing their son's sharp mind and passion for sports, the Hoyts ignored the medical limitations placed upon him. The adventure truly began when Dick decided to form a team with his son, training together to participate in America's toughest endurance races. Team Hoyt became a legend from their first race in 1977. Spectators were stunned to see a father pushing his adult son, who weighed nearly 150 pounds, in a specialized wheelchair during marathons, dragging him in a boat while swimming, and carrying him on a seat on the front of his bicycle. Together, they completed more than 1,000 competitions, including 6 Ironman events, a grueling combination of a marathon, a 112-mile bike ride, and a 2.4-mile swim, all done without stopping. Dick Hoyt performed these superhuman physical feats while bearing the additional weight of his son and equipment. The only explanation for such enduring strength is the power of love. Dick's driving purpose was to show his son that nothing is impossible. Rick absorbed this message fully. He went on to finish high school, graduate from Boston University in special education, and live an autonomous life. This extreme example serves as a reminder that there are limits beyond our imagination that can be breached, proving, as Plato said, that there is no one who cannot become a hero for love. Chapter 37: Mentality of the Marathon Runner. In 490 BCE, the messenger Phidippides undertook the 26-mile run from Marathon to Athens to deliver news of the Greek victory over the Persians, only to collapse and die of exhaustion upon his arrival. This historical tragedy birthed one of the most demanding sporting events in existence, a challenge that requires not only intense physical conditioning, but also a profound mental fortitude to achieve such a long-term objective. While the physical regime of a runner is visible and precise, the internal landscape is where the true battle often takes place. Understanding the emotional topography of a marathon can provide a blueprint for reaching the finish line in any significant project we undertake. As described by Tomas Veach, the mind of a runner traverses distinct phases as the miles accumulate. The journey begins with euphoria, a period of happiness and positive thoughts that carries the runner through the first 4 miles. This gives way to a social phase, where chatting with fellow runners and quickening the pace masks the distance for the next 6 miles. However, as the runner enters the transition stage between mile 10 and 15, the experience becomes neutral, serving as a quiet bridge to the true trial. The real challenge commences between miles 15 and 20, a dormant phase where tiredness, anxiety, and both physical and mental suffering begin to set in. This descends into the phase of suffering, lasting until the 26th mile, characterized by agony and mental exhaustion. Yet, in the final yards, a state of bliss emerges, raising spirits as the finish line finally comes into view. To navigate these treacherous middle miles, runners employ specific mental strategies. Researchers Morgan and Pollock distinguished between 2 primary approaches: the associative strategy, where the athlete focuses intently on their body, breathing, pulse, and muscle sensations, maintaining an internal dialogue, and the dissociative strategy, where the runner intentionally disconnects from the race, focusing on external stimuli like scenery or music to ignore the body's warning signals of pain. Beyond these broad approaches, psychological training offers a suite of tools that are equally applicable to non-competitive ambitions. Self-instruction allows one to act as their own guide, offering positive reinforcement during solitary struggles. Breaking a massive goal into smaller, short-term objectives helps one feel closer to the finish line each day. Techniques for physical and mental relaxation can control anxiety levels, while visualization, mentally rehearsing both the inevitable difficulties and the moment of triumph, prepares the mind for reality. Finally, concentration techniques help differentiate between essential stimuli and distractions that threaten to derail focus. These strategies not only optimize effort, but build the confidence necessary to keep distractions at bay, a discipline required for whichever marathon one plans to run in the near future.
Chapter 38: Get rid of the second arrow. Just as a runner must conquer mental exhaustion, anyone pursuing a goal must guard against the subtle paralysis of apathy and indecision. When these feelings begin to creep into the mind, wisdom can be found in the teachings of the 14th century monk Yoshida Kenko. He recounted the story of a man learning archery who stood before his target with 2 arrows in his hand. His instructor immediately corrected him, insisting that a beginner should never hold a second arrow. The logic was piercing. As long as the archer relies on the existence of a backup, he will inevitably be careless with the first shot. This observation highlights a profound psychological truth. The subconscious knowledge that there is a second string to our bow causes us to act with less dedication, almost ensuring failure at the first attempt. If we operate with the safety net of a second or third option should things go wrong, we tend to become sloppy. The subconscious undermines our focus, reducing the attention paid to the immediate task and increasing the likelihood of failure. This principle is well understood by many successful entrepreneurs who recognized that without a backup plan, the only alternative to success was bankruptcy. Consequently, they poured such immense energy into their work day after day that the probability of success became extremely high. Conversely, this explains the rarity of serial entrepreneurs, those who achieve great success a second or third time. Having reaped the rewards of their first success, they often possess reserve capital which acts as a metaphorical second arrow. This safety net induces relaxation, dulling the sharp edge of necessity that drove their initial triumph. The lesson is to face every new challenge, whether in sports, business, dieting, or love, with a single arrow. If there are spare arrows in the quiver, they should be put away. The most effective approach is to visualize each day as a fresh start where there is only one shot at success, forcing the mind to bring its full resources to bear on the present moment, leaving no room for the complacency that comes with a backup plan.
Chapter 39. The Long Path to Love. The concept of endurance applies not only to personal achievement, but also to the shared journey of relationships. Around the turn of the millennium, sociologist Zygmunt Bauman introduced the concept of liquid love to describe the fragility of modern connections, standing in stark contrast to the solid relationships of our ancestors. In previous generations, marriages, much like careers, were often viewed as lifelong commitments. In the era of liquid modernity, however, relationships have become disposable. Faced with a near-zero tolerance for frustration or conflict, people often turn to the marketplace of dating apps to instantaneously find a substitute partner. This approach, which demands no effort, is the antithesis of the philosophy of endurance and dedication. To understand the nature of solid love, one can look to the example of Zelmira and Herbert Fisher, an American couple who were married for nearly 87 years until Herbert's passing in 2011. Winners of a true marathon of love, they weathered the Great Depression, World War II, the Korean and Vietnam Wars, and the administrations of 15 U.S. presidents side by side. By 2010, holding the world record for the longest marriage, they shared their wisdom with a digital generation via Twitter. Their secrets were simple yet profound, rooted in a foundation of deep friendship. They grew up together and were best friends before marrying, believing that while passion shifts, a friend is for life. When asked if they would change anything after 8 decades, they replied that they would change nothing, noting there was no secret key other than doing what was necessary for each other and their family. Their guidance for others was grounded in respect, support, and honest communication, urging couples to be faithful and love with all their hearts. Perhaps most poignantly, they described their growth as individuals not as a process of separation, but of sowing and harvesting to celebrate together. They recognized that while they were individuals, they achieved far more when united. Their story serves as a testament that the most meaningful projects in life are those we commit to for the long haul, refusing to treat them as disposable when the first sign of difficulty arises.
Chapter 40. The 10 Ganbatte Rules for Lasting Love. The pursuit of a lasting relationship is perhaps the most delicate marathon we ever undertake, requiring far more than initial passion to sustain it. It begins with the fundamental recognition that not all paths are meant to be walked together. Many couples falter simply because they are the fruit of haste. Before a commitment is made, it is vital to reflect on whether personalities are truly compatible, for the cracks in a foundation will only widen with time. Once the choice is made, the relationship must be nurtured through the philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement. A little, sustained effort applied every day is infinitely more valuable than grand, sporadic demonstrations of love followed by long silences. Like a long-distance runner, a couple must pace themselves, employing discipline to ensure their emotional strength does not fail them in the later miles. A common pitfall in this journey is the complacency of believing the partner has already been seduced and requires no further courtship. Taking a bond for granted and ceasing to be attentive is a surefire route to its erosion. In the battle for love, there is no definitive victory, only a title that must be earned anew each day. This daily maintenance requires vigilance over one's words, as many arguments stem from trivialities that are blown out of proportion, expanding like a balloon until it bursts. When reproaches and finger-pointing replace communication, the result is defensiveness and hurt feelings rather than resolution. To counteract this, one must remember the opening chapters of their shared story. A couple is an open book written daily, but keeping the memory of what first sparked the flame alive helps sustain the fire through colder times. Endurance in love also requires a deep acceptance of the other's nature, rooted in the concept of wabi-sabi, or the appreciation of the beauty of imperfection. This is not to be confused with resignation, but rather an awareness that every person is a work in progress, an evolving soul. From this acceptance, growth becomes a shared endeavor. This future is nourished by making new plans together. Beyond the routine of day-to-day life, a couple needs shared dreams to light up the darker days. The certainty of moving forward together toward a common horizon places wind in the sails of the relationship. Yet, paradoxically, closeness requires distance. Every relationship needs a secret garden, a balance between common ground and a private space where individuals can develop their own interests and rediscover themselves. Finally, the emotional resilience of a couple relies on admiration and laughter. Love cannot survive without an appreciative eye. When one partner feels invisible, they inevitably drift away. Being the greatest source of support for the one you love is non-negotiable. Furthermore, because any long love story will inevitably encounter potholes and crises, the ability to laugh together is a survival mechanism. Taking life too seriously or adopting a pessimistic outlook can derail the project, whereas remembering that tragedy plus time equals comedy allows the couple to weather the storm.
Chapter 41. Akira Kurosawa. Whatever it takes to attain perfection. The concept of giving one's absolute best finds a legendary embodiment in the world of cinema through the director Akira Kurosawa. Working in an era before digital effects could mask imperfections or create worlds from nothing, the director of classics such as The Seven Samurai and Dersu Uzala developed a style defined by an almost obsessive precision. He operated under the belief that fate deals the cards, but it is human effort and imagination that play the hand, compensating for any lack of means. Kurosawa's approach to perfection was absolute. To ensure authentic performances, he would place cameras far away using telephoto lenses, believing that if actors could not see the equipment, they would forget they were being filmed and perform more naturally. This relentless pursuit of his vision often horrified those concerned with budgets and schedules. Kurosawa would send costumes to actors weeks before filming began, insisting they wear the often uncomfortable feudal garments constantly so that their movements would appear natural by the time the cameras rolled. He viewed the elements not as background, but as characters. Rain, fog, snow, and heat had to interact viscerally with the cast. In his 1950 masterpiece, Rashomon, he went so far as to dye the water used for rain with black ink so that it would contrast starkly against the gray background, ensuring the audience felt the downpour as intensely as the characters did.
This refusal to compromise extended to the physical landscape itself. For the movie Ran, Kurosawa had an entire castle constructed solely for the purpose of burning it down in a single, spectacular scene. He used mechanical means to reverse the flow of a stream to achieve a specific visual effect, and for Kagemusha, hired 5,000 extras for a battle scene that lasted a mere 3 minutes. Such extravagance depleted production funds, famously requiring intervention from admirers like George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola to secure distribution rights and save the project. Yet the result of this extreme attention to detail was a body of work that transcended cinema. Today, his influence is seen even in modern video games like Ghost of Tsushima, which honors his visual language. Kurosawa proves that staying true to one's ideas, regardless of the effort, yields results that stand the test of time.
Chapter 42: The Summit of Mount Fuji. In the collective imagination of Japan, one challenge stands above all others: the ascent of the country's snow-capped ceiling. Mount Fuji, rising to 12,389 feet, is more than a geographical high point. It is a sacred entity, revered like a religious figure and dotted with shrines along its hillsides. It is a presence that most Japanese people eventually consider scaling, though the reality of the climb often tempers the romance. A popular national saying suggests that whoever has never climbed Fuji is a fool, but whoever climbs it a second time is an even bigger fool. Despite the grueling fatigue of the ascent, over 300,000 people undertake the adventure annually during the short climbing season of July and August, creating veritable traffic jams of hikers on the slopes. The ascent is typically navigated via one of 4 main trails, each offering a different experience. The Yoshida Trail is the most popular and accessible, while the Fujinomiya Trail offers the shortest but steepest route to the summit. Others, like the Subashiri, wind through forests before merging with the crowds, while the Gotemba Trail offers the lowest starting altitude and the most difficult terrain for those seeking solitude. Regardless of the path chosen, the climb takes hours, culminating in the tradition of Ohachi Meguri, a walk around the summit's crater loop. Here, hikers can view the weather station at the highest point in Japan and look out over the world below. For centuries, however, the mountain has been most famously experienced from a distance. It is the undeniable emblem of Japan, immortalized in ukiyo-e woodblock prints, most notably Katsushika Hokusai's 36 Views of Mount Fuji. In this series, the dormant volcano appears sometimes as the center stage, and other times as a silent backdrop to everyday life. In the iconic The Great Wave of Kanagawa, the mountain stands firm in the background, anchoring the scene against the violence of the sea. Whether struggled up by hikers or admired in art, Mount Fuji represents strength, endurance, and a grandeur that the human mind can scarcely comprehend, but the spirit can always feel, a fitting symbol for the persistence required in all aspects of life.
Chapter 43: Reinventing the Wheel. The phrase reinventing the wheel emerged from the Western business world of the 1970s, typically carrying a negative connotation that suggests a futile waste of time or an unnecessary duplication of effort. However, this perspective fundamentally misunderstands the nature of progress. Reinventing, whether it applies to a mechanical wheel or to oneself, is arguably the most valuable pursuit one can undertake. After all, if humanity had accepted the first iteration of the wheel as the final standard, modern automobiles would still be rolling on the primitive, stone-hewn circles of prehistoric chariots. Instead, history shows us that true innovation often lies not in creating something from nothing, but in the relentless improvement of what already exists. There is perhaps no greater example of this spirit than Soichiro Honda. His journey began in 1937 with the manufacture of engine piston rings, a venture that initially seemed doomed to failure. His first attempts were rejected by Toyota for failing to pass quality controls, yet Honda refused to view this as a signal to stop. Instead, he persisted in reinventing the piston ring, a technology that many other manufacturers had already mastered, until he perfected his own version. By 1941, Toyota accepted his product, allowing him to expand his business significantly. However, his resilience was tested again in 1944 when an American air raid destroyed his production plants. Rather than succumbing to misfortune, he rose from the ashes just 2 years later to found the Honda Company in 1946, this time setting his sights on reinventing the motorcycle. By 1948, the mass production of the first Honda motorcycle model had begun, marking the start of a legendary ascent. This drive to improve the existing world extended beyond his own direct inventions. In 1950, Honda met Kenji Suzuki and encouraged him to establish a company dedicated solely to wheels. Suzuki followed this advice and founded Enki, which began supplying Honda and eventually grew into one of the world's largest and most respected alloy wheel manufacturers. Meanwhile, Honda's own trajectory continued to skyrocket. By the 1960s, his motorcycles were outselling established giants like Triumph and Harley-Davidson, brands that had previously seemed untouchable. The company did not rest on these laurels. In 1963, they introduced their first car, a modest beginning that paved the way for Honda Motors to become a global automotive titan within 2 decades. This spirit of reinvention eventually took the company from the roads to the furthest reaches of technology. In 1986, they ventured into robotics with the creation of the humanoid robot E-Zero, the ancestor of the famous Asimo, which astounded the world with its ability to walk on 2 legs. By the turn of the century, the company's vision expanded to the skies, culminating in the development of the Honda Jet HA420, a plane celebrated for its innovative low fuel consumption. Had Soichiro Honda accepted the conventional wisdom that reinventing the wheel was a waste of time, he would never have mastered the piston ring, let alone revolutionized the motorcycle, automobile, and aviation industries. This pattern of taking an existing concept and transforming it is the hallmark of every major leap in modern history. Microsoft reinvented the operating system by adding a user interface. Apple reinvented the telephone. Google reinvented the search engine. Tesla reinvented the car. And SpaceX is currently reinventing the space rocket. In this light, the act of reinvention is not a redundancy, but a discovery of new paths. This principle applies just as powerfully to personal development. When you feel you are retreading old ground, remember that even the greatest innovators faced doubts and disasters before their breakthroughs. The goal is to reinvent your wheel, adding a part of yourself to it and moving forward without fear. Do not be complacent, do not fear to dream, and never give up. Ganbatte.
Chapter 44. In Marco Polo's Footsteps. To truly understand values such as patience, effort, courage, and resilience, it is often necessary to look backward, specifically to cast our gaze 7.5 centuries into the past. During the Middle Ages, a vast and intricate network of relations between territories was being woven by travelers who ventured into the unknown. Among these, Marco Polo stands out as perhaps the most famous, not only because he committed his journey to writing, securing international fame long after his death, but also because of the significant weight his contemporaries placed upon his accounts. Although he never reached Japan, the land he referred to as Cipango, he did succeed in reaching China and the court of Kublai Khan, the very ruler who twice attempted to invade the Japanese islands. The legacy of Marco Polo is encapsulated in the Book of the Marvels of the World, a text that became known in Italian as Il Milione for the million-tall tales it was rumored to contain. Interestingly, the Venetian explorer did not physically write the book himself. After returning from China, he was captured by the Genoese during the Battle of Cruzola in 1298. It was during his imprisonment that he met Rustichello da Pisa, a writer formerly in the service of the King of England. Rustichello placed his literary skill at the service of Polo's memory, ensuring that the details of his epic voyage were preserved for history. The journey itself began in 1271, when Marco Polo was just 17 years old. Departing with his father and uncle, he embarked on an odyssey to the Great Khan's court that would require traversing the entirety of Asia along the Silk Road. 3 years passed between the moment he stepped out of his native Venice and the moment he set foot in the Khan's summer palace in Xanadu. Over those long years, his initial conviction became a necessary survival tool as he plunged deeper into unknown territories. The stakes were absolute. He was risking his life against bandit attacks, the navigation of unfamiliar cultures, and the chaos of fratricidal wars between Genghis Khan's grandchildren. The physical toll was immense, evidenced by a bout of tuberculosis that forced him to spend a year recovering in the mountains, yet he never abandoned his objective. Polo's experience was the epitome of medieval travel, a feat that required a mindset vastly different from our own. In an era devoid of mechanical motive power, the only energy available for transportation came from the muscles of animals and men, or, if one were lucky, the wind. Travel was a kind of permanent pilgrimage dictated by the sun. Caravans moved only while there was light, covering a mere 15 miles a day on foot, or perhaps double that on horseback. While maritime routes offered greater speed and cargo capacity, they were fraught with the perils of pirates, buccaneers, and shipwrecks. Travelers of this era knew that disease or violence might claim them en route, yet they accepted these mortal risks and persevered, driven by commercial or religious necessities. Reflecting on these epic journeys offers a profound sense of perspective for the modern mind. Reading about the sheer scale of the obstacles faced by medieval travelers helps to diminish the perceived difficulty of our own current projects, which may make us feel dizzy with anxiety but rarely threaten our lives. There is a specific wisdom found in the act of pilgrimage, which often involves the physical act of climbing, whether it is the Mount Kailash pilgrimage in Tibet, the Camino de Santiago, the Glastonbury Tour, or the Kumano Trail in Japan. Just as these sacred places are physically elevated, the effort required to reach them humbles the traveler. It is a reminder that feeling daunted by a task is not a weakness. Rather, the key to overcoming any distance, in travel or in life, lies in the simple, repetitive act of putting one foot in front of the other, with the mind firmly set on the final goal.
Chapter 45. The Pilgrim's Route. There is no need to summon the age of Marco Polo or brave the perils faced by early explorers to embark on a long journey of discovery. Modern exploration can be turned inward, finding a spiritual path well suited for those moments in life when one needs to meditate on a profound change. Japan offers such a route in the form of the Kumano Kodo, a pilgrimage network so culturally significant that it shares a unique distinction with the Way of St. James in Spain. They are the only 2 spiritual paths on the UNESCO World Heritage List. This Japanese route winds through the rugged, leafy Kii Peninsula, a region that has been considered holy for centuries. It is a place where the arrival of Buddhism from China merged seamlessly with Japan's homegrown Shintoism, creating a landscape where temples and nature exist in perfect harmony. The ultimate objective of this pilgrimage is to worship at the 3 great temples collectively known as Kumano Sanzan. The first of these sacred sites stands on a hill, having been rebuilt there after a great flood destroyed its ancient pavilions. The second is situated at the mouth of the river Kumano and features a majestic centerpiece that exemplifies the adoration of nature, an 800-year-old Nagi no Ki tree. The final destination is an ancient Shinto shrine nestled in the middle of Mount Nachi, home to Japan's highest waterfall, which plummets 436 feet. Since the 10th century, emperors would travel from Kyoto to Osaka to make this pilgrimage once or twice in their lifetime, usually following the Nakahechi Trail. Known as the Imperial Trail, this remains the most famous of the 4 routes crossing the mountains. It spans approximately 25 miles and presents no great difficulty, characterized only by the gentle unevenness of paths meandering around the mountains. Its traditional starting point is the Takijiri Oji Shrine, the gateway to the so-called Kingdom of Kumano. From there, the route passes several minor temples and the 1,800-year-old hot springs of Yunomine Onsen before reaching the great temples. While the Imperial Trail is the most common choice, the modern pilgrim contemplating a visit to this magical territory must choose between 3 other distinct paths, each offering a different experience. The Kohechi, or Mountainous Trail, is the longest and most arduous option. It connects Mount Koya to Kumano, stretching 43 miles and rising over 3,000 feet. In contrast, the Ohechi, or Coast Trail, follows the southern shoreline from Tanabe to the Fudaraku-san-ji Temple, offering excellent panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean. Finally, the Ise-ji, or East Trail, traverses the coast between the Ise Jingu Shrine and Kumano, leading the traveler through bamboo forests, terraced rice paddies, and up 100-year-old cobblestone stairs. Regardless of the chosen path, the pilgrim who begins at the Takijiri Oji Temple should approach the shrine to pray for a favorable journey using a simple traditional ritual. Ring the bell to alert the gods of your presence, bow twice, clap, say a silent prayer, and bow once more. Once the gods have been informed, the image that accompanies the traveler is the 3-legged crow, known as the Yata Garasu. This symbol of Shinto mythology serves as the messenger of the gods and represents their will to intervene in human affairs, with its 3 legs symbolizing the unity of the sky, the earth, and man. This journey, therefore, is not merely a physical trek through the mountains, but a symbolic alignment of oneself with the natural and divine worlds.
Chapter 46. Joseph Merrick, The Heroism of Being Human. We must now turn our attention to a different, far more painful type of pilgrimage, the journey that, despite all adversities, keeps us on the path to retaining our essential humanity. In 1980, the world was deeply moved by David Lynch's film The Elephant Man, which recounted the true story of Joseph Merrick, a 19th-century Englishman who suffered from the most severe known case of Proteus syndrome. This condition inflicted terrible deformities across his entire body, dictating a life that began in the shadows. From childhood, he was hidden away in the homes of relatives, later attempting to work as a traveling salesman, before finally being reduced to an exhibit in freak shows. His existence was a living hell until the intervention of Dr. Frederick Treves, who took him into the London hospital without initially securing permission from his superiors. Treves eventually placed an advertisement in the press appealing for financial aid, a plea to which English society responded with unexpected generosity, funding a suite of rooms at the hospital where Merrick could live out the remainder of his days in safety. This case is included here not merely as a historical curiosity, but because of the astonishing courage and humanity with which Merrick bore his condition. Despite the acute physical pain he endured daily, his head was so massive he could arguably barely keep it upright, and the cruel insults and exploitation he suffered prior to finding sanctuary, he never lost his sweet character. He remained unfailingly polite to everyone he met. Furthermore, within the narrow scope of his limited mobility, he cultivated impressive artistic abilities. With one completely malformed arm and the other as scrawny and weak as a child's, he learned basket making, gifting his wicker creations to those who treated him with kindness. He also constructed delicate cardboard models, including an intricately detailed replica of the church he could see from his hospital window, a testament to his spirit that remains preserved at the London hospital to this day. As his deformities worsened and his right hand became useless, Merrick adapted by learning to produce meticulous, elegant handwriting with his left hand. Among the writings that have been preserved is a poignant poem in which he merged 4 of his own verses with 4 by the Protestant minister Isaac Watts. He wrote, 'Tis true my form is something odd, but blaming me is blaming God. Could I create myself anew, I would not fail in pleasing you. If I could reach from pole to pole or grasp the ocean with a span, I would be measured by the soul. The mind's the standard of the man. Joseph Merrick died in 1890 at the age of 27, but through his unswerving kindness and creative effort, he left a lasting lesson. If the mind is truly the measure of a man and sensitivity is its highest expression, then he exemplified the very best of the human spirit. Chapter 47. Koan. For more than 1,000 years, the Zen Buddhist tradition has utilized a unique tool to disengage the logical mind, the koan. These paradoxical riddles serve as a means to open the consciousness to alternative outlooks, fostering what the Maltese psychologist Edward de Bono termed lateral thinking. The purpose of a koan is not to engage the intellect in a conventional puzzle, but to exhaust it, allowing a deeper, intuitive understanding to emerge. If a practitioner dedicates sufficient effort to using a koan as an object of meditation, they may eventually reach kensho, the state of seeing essential reality, a profound realization capable of completely transforming the individual. One of the most enduring and widely recognized examples asks the meditator to consider a simple physical action. This is the sound of clapping your hands. But what is the sound made by a single hand? To those familiar with the riddle, it remains unforgettable, yet the instruction is always to close one's eyes and attempt to visualize this impossible sound. It becomes immediately clear that koans were never designed as problems requiring logical solutions. Rather, they are learning tools meant to be absorbed by the subconscious of the intuitive mind. The frustration of the logical mind is the point, for when we obsessively try to solve things, we often feel the best parts of life slipping away like sand between our fingers. Much like the koan, life itself is not a problem to be solved, but a beautiful and precious reality, the only gift fate bestowed at birth, that simply asks to be paid attention to and savored. Another classic koan, celebrated in both China and Japan, presents a dialogue that defies rational analysis. A monk once asked the master Zhaozhu, "Does a dog have Buddha's nature or not?" To which Zhaozhu replied with a single word, wu. In Japanese, this is pronounced mu, a term translating to not having, void, without anything, or what does not exist. The answer is not a simple yes or no, but a confrontation with the concept of emptiness itself. The challenge for the seeker is to dare to interpret it, to listen to what intuition whispers when logic falls silent. We must ask ourselves what koans exist in our own day-to-day lives, and what truths we might hear if we finally stopped trying to solve the world and started listening to it. Chapter 48. Life as a Work of Art. In Japan, even amidst the rush of modern life, the Asahi Shimbun stands as a testament to a culture that refuses to sever its ties with beauty. As one of the country's best-selling newspapers, it is read by millions every day. Yet on its front page, surrounded by urgent headlines, economic reports, and political announcements, there remains a designated space reserved solely for poetry. This small box is not an afterthought, it is a destination. Many readers buy the paper purely for these few lines, carefully cutting them out to keep as personal treasures. In this way, ordinary citizens become art collectors, using these daily fragments of verse to bathe their hearts in beauty and remind themselves, despite their hectic lifestyles, that life itself is a work of art. This intersection of the Ganbatte spirit, the drive to do things as well as possible, and artistic appreciation has deep historical roots. A prime example is the Yakunin Isshu, an anthology of 100 waka poems compiled by Fujiwara no Teika in the 13th century.
These poems so captivated the Japanese imagination that they gave rise to a spontaneous game known as Uta Garuta. The game utilizes 2 decks of cards, yomifuda, or reading cards, which contain the complete poems, and torifuda, or grabbing cards, which display only the final few syllables. As one person reads the full poem aloud, players race to snatch the corresponding card from the table. The most skilled players do not need to hear the whole verse. They can identify the poem and claim the card after hearing just the first 2 or 3 syllables. The legacy of this game is woven into the very fabric of modern Japanese entertainment. In 1889, a company was founded in Kyoto specifically to manufacture and sell Uta Garuta decks. That company was Nintendo, and while it is now a global giant known for video games and consoles, it still produces these traditional cards today. The game keeps alive ancient verses, such as the famous second poem of the anthology, written by Empress Jito in the 7th century. Spring has passed, and the white robes of summer are being aired on fragrant Mount Kagu, beloved of the gods. In a world that increasingly prizes rational planning and efficiency, such poetry speaks directly to human nature, offering a necessary pause, a chance to breathe and reconnect with the aesthetic dimension of existence.
Chapter 49. The Journey to Wisdom. During a visit to the Tsutaya bookstore in Daikayama, a paradise for culture lovers in Tokyo, a conversation overheard in the travel section highlighted a stark contrast in how we approach the journeys of our lives. 2 young architects were discussing an upcoming trip to Europe. They had 2 weeks and a rail pass, and their conversation revolved around maximizing the number of countries they could visit. One pointed out that because some European nations are small, they could manage to hit 10 countries in that fortnight. This obsession with quantity, of sticking flag pins in a map to boast of having been there, often results in travelers who cross borders without ever truly knowing the places they visit. This frantic accumulation of experiences stands in opposition to the wisdom found in Ithaca, a poem by the Alexandrian poet Constantine Cavafy. Addressing the legendary journey of Odysseus, Cavafy advises the traveler to wish for the road to be long, full of adventure, full of knowledge. For the poet, the value lies not in the arrival, but in the voyage itself, in the summer mornings of entering new ports with pleasure, and the time spent learning from the sages of foreign cities. The goal is not to rush, but to let the journey last for years, so that one arrives at the destination, Ithaca, as an old man, wealthy with all that was gained along the way. Cavafy's own life mirrored this philosophy of patience. His reputation as one of the most important Greek poets of the last 2 millennia rests on a modest body of 154 poems, the result of 50 years of sustained, careful effort. His poem concludes with a profound realization. Ithaca gave you the beautiful journey. Without it, you would never have set out. Even if you find the island impoverished upon arrival, it has not deceived you. With the wisdom and experience gained, you will understand what such destinations truly mean. It is the path, not the finish line, that shapes us.
Chapter 50. The 10 Ganbatte Rules. To navigate this long road of life with the resilience and grace inherent in the Japanese spirit, one can look to 10 guiding principles of Ganbatte. First, make the best effort you can. The essence of Ganbatte is not about the outcome, which is often beyond our control, but about the satisfaction of knowing you gave your absolute best at every moment. Second, heat the rock. This Japanese saying suggests that even a cold rock will warm up if you sit on it for 3 years. Success is rarely the result of a single exaggerated burst of energy, but rather the product of consistency, doing a little each day to melt the obstacles in your path. Third, fall forwards. Mistakes are not failures, they are data. Science progresses through trial and error, and personal transformation follows the same trajectory. If you try, fail, and learn, you are moving forward. Fourth, be flexible and resilient. True resilience is like metal that bends under pressure but returns to its original shape once the stress is released. To survive the changing circumstances of life, your efforts must be malleable. Fifth, rule it out in time. Perseverance is a virtue, but blind stubbornness is not. There is a fine line between giving up too soon and persisting too long. Listen to your heart to know when a path has reached its end and when it is time to set off on a new one. Sixth, look at your feet and the horizon simultaneously. Maintain focus on the daily steps of your routine while keeping your long-term vision alive in your mind. This dual perspective bridges the gap between where you are and where you imagine you can be. Seventh, rituals are more important than finishing lines. A completed project is simply the accumulation of daily habits. In the Japanese view, the way you do something often matters more than the result. Focus on the quality of the path to ensure the destination is reached. 8. Everything starts in the mind. Before reality takes shape, it exists as a thought. Visualize the effort and the steps required to reach your dream, projecting them onto your mental screen before translating them into action. 9. Enjoy the journey. Do not allow your objectives to become sources of anxiety. The true prize is found in the learning, the people, and the experiences encountered along the way. To be in motion is in itself a success. 10th. Start right now. Ganbatte. Whatever you aim to do will remain a fantasy until you begin. Do not put it off to tomorrow. Start already. And when you feel your spirit flagging, remember the call to persevere. Epilogue. Reaching the end of this journey is proof in itself that the spirit of Ganbatte resides within you. You now possess the tools to write the new chapters of your life with effort and hope. There is a profound sadness in wasted potential. While talent is common, the perseverance required to transmute that talent into success is rare. It is this alchemy of daily progress, adaptation, and movement that feeds the spirit. Consider the fable of the ant and the grasshopper. The ant's survival through the winter is owed to its determination, effort, and humility, traits that serve as a lesson in times of adversity. Yet, the ideal approach combines the ant's tireless perseverance with the vision of an eagle. If you can persist without giving up, flow like water around obstacles, and remain as flexible as a reed in the wind, you will travel as far as you intend to go. A unique journey awaits, one that only you can make. Ride the waves of life with a smile, moving forward with enthusiasm, love, and tenacity. Above all, believe in yourself and the wisdom of your own heart. Ganbatte.